Oh, hoy, hoy. Welcome back, or in. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We are live, and I am pleased to be joined tonight by my guys, my buddies, my pals. Fighting out of the bottom right corner for me is Jules, at the point after FF. What's good, Jules?
Not well, a lot, man. I built my cats a nice cat stand today, and I'm ready to talk some football.
Meow. So fighting out of actually Jimbo's not even here. So I'm just gonna say we have no T-Rav tonight. Our fearless leader was questionable all week, and yeah, he was declared out early this morning. He still helped with logistics, of course. He is a logistical genius. But fighting out of the corner beside me is Bride Guy. Bride Guy, you are manning the controls tonight, so I can't thank you enough for that. How are you mamming them?
I'm doing good, man. Just been a busy day running around doing stuff with the kid, and came on last second when you guys needed some help.
I know. I really appreciate it. So sorry to keep our guests waiting here, and they are kind of the equivalent of the main event fighters tonight. So if I was Bruce Buffer, if I was standing up, I'd be in your face, kind of rolling down the tape here, guys. But Jeff, seriously, thanks so much for joining us. We desperately need you this week, because we have a litany of injuries. This season's just been crazy. And with that is all this ambiguity, right? So fighting out of the right corner for me is Jeff Mueller, and he's a writer for the Dynasty Vipers. That's at Dynasty Vipers on Twitter. And he's an injury analyst for Destination Devy, guys, at Destination Devy. One of the best groups. I'm a really, really big fan. So, dude, thanks so much for coming on. Why don't you tell folks where they can find you on Twitter, and because you are a spectacular follow, and let us know what you're working on during the season.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on as a guest. I love what you guys are doing through True North. So it's been a pleasure, just watching all your content and listening to your content. You can find me at JM Thrive PT, and then, like you said, at Destination Devy, doing some injury analyst work over there.
And last but certainly not least, at the bottom there in that bottom corner, we have Tyler, who's a fellow BC boy, a writer for the Dynasty Nerds, Nerd Herd Alert. Tyler is at Dinostradamus on Twitter, a great follow as well. So, dude, thank you so much for coming on. Why don't you tell everyone where the hell you are right now? And also, I was curious because you're from the Pacific Northwest, as am I. We just finished that electric Thursday night football game. Are you a Seahawks fan? I was also wondering.
Hey guys, yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Love what you guys are doing. Great group representing the North. I love it. Yeah, I'm in an airport right now, catching a flight to work. So if you guys hear anything, sorry about that. I think I found a nice, quiet, secluded corner for the time being, at least. As for your question, I know I'm a Vikings fan. So yeah, the Blair Walsh missed kick still hurts. But
too funny. Yeah. That's awesome though. Right on. I a lot of my friends are Seahawks fans, so sometimes you just kind of assume, but assumptions lead to mistakes, because most of us, we grow up where we have kind of a wide variety of teams at our disposal to choose from up here in Canada. And yeah, it's just so funny that you're in an airport right now. So with that, let's jet into this here. Let's get it. Actually, for the noobs, I guess I should give a synopsis of what we're doing here tonight. Basically, just a rundown for the games and players. We'll make sure everybody has a good snapshot of the game and the matchup for the slate of games tomorrow. We'll touch on some of the things that all the fantasy points trickle down from, like the degenerate stuff, the spread, the point totals. And even if you aren't a betting man or woman, the perceptions can kind of speak volumes, right, about how the game likely goes, which we can also touch on how the chips will fall in each particular matchup. And obviously the top storylines take precedent, and we want to be relating all this matchup to fantasy football for tomorrow. So we'll hit all that stuff, but most of the time what we do, it circles around start-sit decisions, making those tough calls, right? Looking at expert consensus ranking, just player value for this week, going forward, following the trends, talking about the buzzy players and who we're high on, who we're low on this week and rest of the season. So usually I would go through some of the bye teams and stuff, but I actually have no idea who they are. It slipped my memory. I know it's the Bills, and there's four of them. Anyone?
The Bears have one, and
Niners.
The Niners, yeah. Nice. There's one. The Giants. Boom. So I knew we would power through that.
Perfect
team there. And also with that Seattle-Arizona game that I mentioned on Thursday Night Football, that's a lot of starters in rosters that have already played. So there's people who are behind the 8 ball. Some people need to play catch up. Some people might just want to play it safe. So we'll help people make those kind of decisions. Thanks, guys, for reminding me there. So why don't we start with the game that has the highest point total? And I should mention that Gymnastic, was supposed to be on this episode. He is completely MIA. So I am sorry, Jim, that we have to do you better get here before we finish the Chiefs, because I had lots of questions for him. And yeah, we're going to just have to power through without him. The funny thing about this matchup is we just never start. Like, we usually hit a game with the highest point total to begin, but we never start with the Raiders. So we're going to do that this week. We're going to Vegas, baby. And in this, it's a Sunday night football game. That's why it's really important. And a rematch between division rivals here in week 5. The Raiders actually upset Kansas City, handing them their first and only loss this season in Arrowhead. So Mahomes, he had his only interception in that game. It's also his only career loss to the Raiders. This game is in Vegas now, but Kansas City is coming off their bye week. We know how potent Andy Reid's offenses can be in that scenario. This is a game with the Chiefs' #1 passing offense, and they're the second highest scoring team in football. The Raiders' defense surrenders a ton of passing yards. They give up about 27 points per game on defense. So, Tyler, Mr. Airport, do you see this game living up to the 57-point total we see?
It might go past that, guys. I honestly think it's gonna. Is that defense even? Have they been cleared of COVID yet? Do they even have starters?
Yeah,
They were cleared this morning.
activated some of them today.
I think 7 guys.
Oh, okay. That's a step in the right direction.
And, you kind of see that with the point total. Like, you see that with the spread. The Raiders, there's just no love for them at home here. They're +8. Both teams, by the way, are 6-3 against the spread this year. So we've made money off both these teams. But I think it's interesting to point out what we saw with Matt Stafford. Like, these guys who spend the week on the COVID reserve list, it's tough because you're away from the team, away from practice. But if you look at the Raiders, we have to bring up that week 5 matchup because we all know the Chiefs are going to have tons of success on offense. The tougher question is how much successful the Raiders, can they replicate some of that week 5 success they had on offense when they had almost 500 yards on offense against Kansas City in that first meeting. Also, they had the ball for 35 minutes in that game. But guys, pretending, the Raiders haven't already had success against the Chiefs, the defense for Kansas City has been really good this year. I mean, they are sort of a run funnel who are going against Josh Jacobs and Devontae Booker, but Kansas City is top 10 against the pass. They're very good. Jeff, I would love right away to just go to you with some of these Chiefs injuries because I mentioned this is the Sunday night game. So for lineups, what are some of the players we have to monitor for Kansas City?
Yeah, and I mostly looked at the offensive players, but I had a lot of questions about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He was cleared. He had an illness, but it wasn't COVID related, so he's good to go. Wasn't even on the injury report at the end. One name I actually swapped out. I thought McCole Hardman would be out. He got cleared from COVID, so he's activated. Well, Sammy Watkins is actually ruled out. I thought he was going to be able to go. So
in perpetuity, drink, everyone drink.
Yeah, so really, I mean, I don't know if you guys have any input on who you would rather play on McCole Hardman or Demarcus Robinson, or even if you go both against this Raiders defense.
Oh, that's tough, man. I think they're talented guys, but I'm a little worried about Miko coming off of, he's been on the COVID list for 3 weeks now, I believe. You just said, Ty, how difficult it is for these guys to come back and play right away. And I don't think he's going to get a whole lot of volume in his first week back. He's kind of a guy who needs 1 or 2 plays to break it anyway. So I'm staying away there, but I'd probably take a shot on Demarcus Robinson in a deeper league, 3 wide receiver, 2 flex type of thing. Where do you guys stand?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I might take a shot if I need to on Robinson, but I'm not going to play McCole.
Yeah, no, I love Mecole Hardman so much. It's tough, but until it's one of those guys until you see it and then you plug him in and it just doesn't happen the next week. We're just going to shoot ourselves in the foot a lot of the times with a Mecole Hardman type prospect. I think Demarcus Robinson's 100% in play, right? He has double-digit PPR points in back-to-back games, 3 of the past 4 games, and played a ton of snaps this year. By the way, 6 targets, season high, 69 yards receiving is his season high, and D-Rob hasn't eclipsed either of those marks in 21 straight games. So while he's primed to break those streaks. I think he's just never shown that he's had a ceiling or anything. Like, are we even thinking about Byron Pringle? Does nobody wants to look at Byron Pringle?
No.
Well, I think it's interesting. Like, this matchup on paper isn't great, but the Raiders rank bottom 10 in air yards allowed and yards after the catch. We know Kansas City can air it out, but they are the most sneaky team after the catch. The Chiefs is ranked top 3 in yards after the catch as a team 3 years straight. Just kind of, Andy Reid is just a scheme machine. And I think, honestly, though, the biggest beneficiary, do you think it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire? What do you think, Tyler?
Did he hear you?
I don't know. Tyler, you got me there?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, guys. It just got out there. I must have had some serious Yeah, no. Sorry about that, guys. Airport light.
Rolling with the punches.
For me, like, it's the usual suspects. Like, that's all I'm touching in this game. I'm one of those guys that avoid high variability plays. I'm out on Robinson. I'm out on Equal Hardman. I'm all the Kels, all the Tyreek Hill. Those are guys. It's just too much. There's too much unknown this year. If I'm gonna go and chase points, it's probably gonna be in a game like this that has a high point total. But I don't trust those guys. I feel like that's a quick way to lose every week is praying, unless you have to, praying on a Robinson or praying for Mecole Hardman finally to break one. It's just I feel like due to all the injuries right now, there's smarter starts that you can literally pick up off waivers.
That's so well put. Like, when injuries befall a team, it isn't the ancillaries that benefit most of the time, even though people like to talk about them more. It is 100% the players increasing their share of the offense that they already have. That's perfect. I want to talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, though, guys. It's funny, like, right after signing Le'Veon Bell, he went and had a blow-up game. Like, he had 26 carries in that game. I think that was week 6. That was after they signed Lev, before he could play, right? So he has 19 carries in the 3 games with Lev combined. He's scoring 14.1 fantasy points on the season. He's under 14 points in all 3 games with Lev. But Le'Veon Bell has been worse, right? Like, he has 12 PPR points in the 3 games total. He's the 7th highest scoring Chief in fantasy football since coming to town. Guy hasn't had a 20-yard run since 2017. Get him out of my face. So, Brian, my fellow Steelers fan, we know how influential his elite situation was in Pittsburgh for Lev Bell. Are you happy rolling Clyde Edwards-Helaire out the rest of the season as like a running back 1? And do you think Le'Veon Bell is like a drop, or are you holding on to him for your fantasy lineups?
If I need the roster space, I'm gonna get rid of Lev. He's just taking up space. Unless you want to hold on to him, some people might consider him one of those higher end handcuffs if something were to happen with CEH.
A Devontae Booker type.
Yeah. Well, more than Devontae Booker.
Kind of a teaser. Sorry, don't mind me.
Yeah, I don't see CEH as a RB1 that lots of people had him going into the season, rest of the season. I'd say he's like an RB2 with high upside, depending on how that offense is rolling and depending on the matchup.
Yeah, and you look at this. This is an easy matchup. The Raiders allow the 5th most points to running backs. They've given up 11 touchdowns in 9 games to running backs. So hopefully tomorrow is the first day of the rest of our Clyde Edwards-Helaire lives, but we'll definitely be monitoring and or swearing at the monitor as we track Le'Veon Bell's routes run. I totally am scared about that because Clyde Edwards-Helaire the rest of the way, it probably comes down to the receiving work. And this week especially, the Raiders give up over 6 catches per game, 4th most receiving yards per game to running backs, over 50 yards receiving to running backs per game. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire is under 50 yards receiving in the 3 games since Lev signed combined. And by the way, he had 11 fantasy points in week 5 against the Raiders. Anybody want to say a few words about Travis Kelce, or should we go to the Raiders?
What's there to say? Start him.
Exactly. He's just so amazing. I just thought it's interesting because it is a matchup between the tight end 1 and the tight end 2 overall, but only DK Metcalf, Nuke Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, and Devontae Adams are scoring more points per game than Travis Kelce in PPR. Like, this guy is, I just love him. So I feel bad because you'll hear a lot of tight end 1, tight end 2 conversations, but it's definitely he's the GOAT and will be for half a decade running after.
He's just such a the tier gap between him and anyone else is ridiculous, you know.
Yeah,
It's
the
crazy,
tier
like-
gap's so big. Can you even say there's a second best guy, a second best tight
Yeah.
end? I feel like you just
Right,
got to be like Travis Kelce and then the third spot. Like Travis gets 1 and 2. Like he's just, especially in tight end premium.
I won't
the guy's
stand for this
unbelievable.
Kittle.
I love George Kittle, but I mean right now for fantasy, you know.
Right, yeah.
But George Kittle is my guy.
Long-term, yeah.
I just to clear your mind, I couldn't trade George Kittle at the deadline for Travis Kelce. I couldn't get myself to do it because I love George Kittle that much. You know,
And
in hindsight, I
Dynasty
probably
loves the
should have done
upside
it. But here we are.
Well, it's a tough one. I think most people, even heading into this season in Dynasty, had George Kittle ahead of Travis Kelce. I did not, but most people certainly did.
It's the age.
It's a
right?
yak versus,
You know.
yeah, it's the age, and George Kittle might be the best tight end after the catch we've ever seen, too.
Yeah. Yeah, man. He's a fun guy to watch. Just a
So,
great
Tyler-
player for football.
Yeah, totally. Tyler, why don't you kick us off with the Raiders? Do you have any interest in Derek Carr? Carr has hit 21 fantasy points just once this season, but it did come in a game against these Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay, so honestly, my guys in this that I'm gonna go for is gonna be like the usual suspects. You gotta hope that they implement and get Josh Jacobs the ball in the passing game. That's really gonna unhinge his potential to be RB1 on the week. I really think that he's in a good spot there. I think with depending on if the whole defense comes back from COVID or not, I feel like the Raiders are going to be down in this one. Kansas City coming off the bye. I have to hope this week is the week with them involved in the passing game. Waller's going to wall. You know what I mean? He's going to be that guy. And the only other guy that I'd even probably look at on the Raiders outside of quarterbacks, obviously on the Raiders here is Ruggs, and they're hoping that they can channel his inner Tyreek Hill. That's why they drafted him. So in one of those spots where you're hoping that you can get a smash spot or an edge on your competition, take a little bit of risk. To me, it's gotta be Ruggs. But other than that, I'm staying away from the Aguilars and that sort of stuff unless I'm in a really, really deep league.
Totally. That was all really well said. And I think we should be buying them this week before, like, even if you don't anticipate a blow up spot for any of these guys, pick your favorite Raider, buy them because they get the Jets. They get the Falcons next week. They get the Jets the week after. They also have the Chargers in week 15. So some really nice matchups coming up. I'm not sure. What do you think, Jules, about Derek Carr? Like, would you start Derek Carr or, Kirk Cousins against Dallas, who's a pretty nice matchup?
Yeah, that's a close one between the two of them. But I think I'm still rolling Carr out there. You know, I think this is going to be a high scoring game. I do think that Oakland gets behind early and has to fight their way back into it. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is hopefully for our sake through big plays. And I'm not feeling like you said. I'm not sorry. I'm not feeling too great about the receiving options. Yeah, I got the COVID, guys.
Sorry.
Just yeah, no, that's the end of it, guys. You know, I'm not too good about the receiving options, but I'm going to start up Waller. I'm going to start up Jacobs, and I'll probably play Carr in 2 QB leagues. 1 QB, I think there's better options.
Yeah, it's funny because he is ranked like up there because of the previous game in week 5. So do we want to get into this backfield? Actually, maybe I'll ask you, Jeff. Do you think the usage, like what's going on with Jacobs? What's going on with Devontae Booker? I actually like both guys, to be honest. Jacobs has had some disappointments this year, but do you think the usage scare with Josh Jacobs, was it kind of just health related, in these past couple of weeks?
I think so. Jacobs has been struggling with a knee injury for 3 or 4 weeks now, although he finally is off the injury report. But I think that's why we're seeing a lot more usage from Devontae Booker. I read a good report from the Raiders running back coach. His name's slipping my mind. But yeah, Booker's balling out right now. So I even like him as a flex play just because they're using him to offload some of the workload from Jacobs. And I saw on player profile, Booker is like number 1 in true yards per carry. And he's playing pretty darn well.
He looks good. He looks good out there.
Yeah, and
it sucks for
Jeff,
Jacobs.
Yeah,
Sorry, go
but
on.
I was just gonna say that Jeff, you had a great tweet about that efficiency. Like it's just so funny how Denver, I bet they wish they still had him. That was a great tweet, and I think it's totally interesting. I mean, Booker scored twice last week. He had 16 carries. Both Jacobs and Booker are top 10 running backs in PPR over the past 2 weeks. So I kind of agree with Jeff. So Jules, you think this does hurt Jacobs? Like, are you happy if Josh Jacobs is your running back one going forward?
Yeah, I am. It hurts seeing Booker take that end zone work, or breaking one off and get a 20-yard touchdown. I mean, it's great for him as a player and great for the Raiders, but for fantasy, you want those touches to go to Josh Jacobs. But you gotta go with the flow. And if Devontae Booker's getting the work, I think he's a guy you can throw out there. And like you said, Jeff, your flex spot.
Yeah, I think so. We all kind of agree. Like Jacobs is kind of a lower end running back one. Booker isn't probably a top 36 guy. I mean, Booker isn't a top 36 guy in expert consensus rankings this week, but I just think Kansas City is such a plus matchup for running backs. They're the 10th best matchup in half PPR. They allow the 6th most rushing yards to running backs over 100 yards per game. And a lot of the running back production for fantasy against Kansas City, it comes via receiving, which is kind of one of our nitpicks with Josh Jacobs. Like we just haven't seen that much. I mean, believe it or not, he's already set career highs in the receiving game, but just like three catches per game, 20 receiving yards per game. But Kansas City allows just under 6 catches per game to running backs, and they allow the 5th most receiving yards to running backs as well. But I wanted to bring up a couple nitpicks really quick with Josh Jacobs. He has 8 touchdowns this season. That's the 3rd most, but he's only scored in 4 games. He's already scored more than his rookie season, but it's thanks to him having 37 red zone carries, which is also the 3rd most, but just 9 of those have come inside the 5-yard line. And I just don't think I wanted to weigh this, like marry it with Devontae Booker coming in. I don't think Jacobs will see Booker vulturing him. Like Booker does have 3 touchdowns in the past 2 games, but Jacobs is out carrying him 7-3 in the red zone, 2-0 in goal line carries though. So, the efficiency, the passing work, there is things that I can nitpick about Josh Jacobs, but the caveat there is that the last 3 games he's really trending in the right direction. Kind of like not these wide receivers though for the Raiders, guys? Like Brian, in a tough matchup against the Chiefs, like, do you have any interest in the wide receivers? Tyler, he said Ruggs is his guy over Nelson Aguilar. Obviously, I thank God he didn't even mention him. But where do you land on those two, Brian?
Yeah, I'm the same boat there. If I'm going to start anybody there, it's going to be Ruggs just for his big play potential. You never know what you're going to get. It could just take 1 or 2 catches for him to really return.
Definitely.
Yeah, and they're both outside they're right around that wide receiver 50 range in expert consensus rankings. Both had big games against Kansas City in week 5. So I think it's interesting. I think Ruggs did that on just like 3 targets. And I think my point is, and what Tyler was saying, like when one of these guys does hit for fantasy, and if it is Ruggs, those are big boons to a fantasy lineup. So I guess, Jeff, you're the only one who really hasn't weighed in. Do you like Ruggs more, or do you think do you think it starts to come for him down the stretch here?
Maybe you didn't see my tweet earlier today after watching the Bama game. I'm not a fan of Ruggs at all. I think he was grossly
overvalued.
Can't think of the term.
There you go.
Thank you. Overvalued. Overhyped.
Agreed, man.
So, I mean, there's a chance. All it takes, like Brian said, he made a great point. All it takes is that one play where he gets over the top of the defense. So, if you like your boomer bust guys, if you're using him as your wide receiver 3, I like it. Outside of that, I think probably stay away.
Yeah, and I could really talk all day about Ruggs' perception, how we think of him. Like, I didn't love him coming in, but there's definitely ways you could have used him, but he's definitely not being used in those ways. Like, he's 2nd in air yards per target among qualified wide receivers, but he's also top 5 in yards after the catch per reception. And then I could really go down like a deep passing rabbit hole. Like DET CAR just isn't, he isn't reticent to even try and make that connection, it seems like, with Henry Ruggs. Instead, he takes like the easiest path to success. And that's how Nelson Aguilar leads the Raiders in catchable deep targets, deep ball receptions, receiving yards off deep ball targets. 4 of 5 Aguilar's deep ball targets have resulted in a touchdown. They account for 4 of the 5 total deep ball touchdowns this season for the goddamn Raiders. So it's just ridiculous when I could even bring, Renfro into this and show like all the catchable deep targets, combine them and put it against Ruggs. It is just criminal. But to Brian's point, to everyone's point, his 72-yard touchdown against Kansas City accounts for 30% of his fantasy points all season, that one play. So that's what he can do. The problem is that he had 118 yards in that game against Kansas City. Ruggs has 74 yards receiving in 4 games since combined. Does anyone want to add anything on any of the other Raiders wide receivers or these guys or Darren Waller, who plays the Chiefs, who have allowed just 3 touchdowns all season to tight ends, but one came in week 5 from Mr. Walla Walla Bing Bang?
No, I think we got it.
To look on a milk carton to find Brian Edwards. So
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately,
where he's been.
I don't want to play Brian Edwards this week, but I'm excited to see him play.
I would
Sorry.
love him to go.
Yeah,
I would
just-
love him to be this something, but
Right?
You're not playing him.
No.
no.
I mean,
See,
if
I
you
would
got
not,
to,
because that would screw anyone else. Like, no, we can't even get one, productive wide receiver, let alone if he comes in, we're all screwed.
Oh.
Okay, I'll go way quicker on this next one here,
It
guys.
breaks
Sorry, I
my
talked way too
heart.
much on that
How
one.
does Nelson Aguilar? Oh, sorry, guys.
No, it's because Carr will throw those passes to whoever's open and nobody else. You know what I mean? Like tight window percentage, deep ball percentage. Like it really bears out in the numbers. It's brutal. So speaking of brutal, let's go to this next game because it's kind of a clusterfuck. So get ready, Jeff, because the Atlanta Falcons are at the Taysom Hill-led New Orleans Saints, arguably. The Saints are still favored by over a field goal. Saints won 4 of the last 5 games against the Falcons, but they did split the season series last year with the road team actually winning both times. So the Falcons got the better of the Saints in New Orleans last year. The totals in those 2 games were tiny, 44 and 35. And me and you talked about this before, Tyler, before we went on air. We were just shocked how little the total from tomorrow's game came down throughout the week. Like after the news about Taysom Hill came down the pipe, still a 49-point total here. So what do you think, Tyler? Do you think we get offense in this game, or should we temper expectations for our fantasy guys in this spot?
Well, that's a tough one. Honestly, it comes down to how is this Taysom Hill stuff real? Is it real? Are we going to see Jameis? I could totally see Sean Payton saying, I'm just going to throw a smoke screen and say Taysom Hill's out there. Send him out there for the first snap, and then you see Jameis Winston. I don't trust it. And Vegas knows something. There's no way you can put in what does Taysom Hill have under 5 completed catches in his career, or under 5 completed passes in his career at the NFL level, and then you don't move the point total on it. Like it doesn't make sense. Somebody knows something we don't.
Yeah. Old man Taysom Hill.
That's a good point.
I think what's interesting in this matchup, though, is whoever is at quarterback will have some success. So I think for the weapons and stuff that we could talk about, like the Saints don't have to air it out, I think, to light it up against the Falcons in the pass game. Like how the Saints win, how they make their money is after the catch, like low average depth of targets and all that, relying on their skilled players, mostly AK all day till the day we die. But my point is, the Falcons entered their bye week last week, allowing the most yards after the catch to opposing offenses. And teams have been the most efficient when facing the Falcons defense on like a per play basis. They allow 6.5 yards per play. Jeff, maybe I'll throw to you here. I want to know, like, what do you see for Drew Brees' timetable before we talk about old man Taysom Hill, before we talk about the strength of the schedule coming up?
Yeah, so great timing on a report that came out just before this show started. It came out with that he has 11 rib fractures, 8 on the left side, 3 on the right, and he still had the collapsed lung. So, he's aiming for the, I think it's week 14 return, and that's, rib injuries are no joke, especially rib fractures. So I wouldn't be surprised if Taysom or Jameis, whoever it ends up being, if they succeed, which really, how hard is it to throw a slant?
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Or a screen.
Yeah, or a screen. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Breeze until maybe week 16, 17, just to get him a little action right before playoffs. So it's going to be a tough recovery.
Yeah, I mean, 11, you can't just wake up and heal 11 broken ribs. No bong hoots for Drew Brees this weekend. So
Pour it all
that
does-
is really interesting, guys. That's a good point. Yeah. So Bong Hoots after Toradol. Yeah. So super interesting because the Saints' strength of schedule kind of, makes us want to have the spotlight on these quarterbacks. Atlanta this week, the number one matchup for quarterbacks in fantasy football. The Denver Broncos next week, Atlanta the week after that. They also get Philadelphia, Kansas City, Minnesota Vikings in fantasy football championship week. So if it's still no Drew Brees in week 16, this is just a killer slate. So what do you think, Jules? Should we be buying low on Saints quarterbacks, the passing game, or has what we've seen from this passing game what we expect to see? Is it going to be too suspect?
Well, I mean, any passing game that has Alvin Kamara involved in it is going to be a decent passing game. But I don't know who it's going to be, man. I'm honestly really concerned about that. They say it's Taysom Hill, but I think that's a smokescreen. This is I just don't see this guy as the guy to come out and lead this team. As in the NFL, and I think Jameis can come out and be effective. So I think we kind of get both of them involved. Taysom Hill is at his best when he's a gadget guy and is able to be worked all over the field and create mismatches in different parts of space. And I think that the way this offense could be a lot better with Jameis and Taysom Hill involved, rather than just trying to give Taysom Hill the ball in the backfield and let him run to this weird wildcat and throw the occasional deep ball. I just think it'll be weird, man. It doesn't feel good for fantasy.
Yeah, it's tricky though, but I do think it's paramount that we decide, and whatever your mind is made up as, go by, because Denver next week, Atlanta again the week after. And yeah, teams are throwing for over 300 yards against the Falcons defense this year. Only the Seahawks have allowed more passing yards per game. Same with air yards, same with fantasy points. And Atlanta gives up 2.44 passing touchdowns per game, the most in football. So I just think it's such a great matchup that they also get, while Drew Brees is still going to be out. So you mentioned earlier, Tyler, that we could see a bunch of RPOs and stuff. I think that's interesting. Does anybody want to talk about Alvin Kamara or these running backs going against Atlanta this week?
I think Latavius Murray is a guy you can throw in your flex spot as well. I think they're going to rely a bit on the run here, and I think he's going to get some garbage time work as well.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting matchup because Atlanta is kind of like a pass funnel, even inside of fantasy points allowed to the running back position. Receiving work is how running backs score against Atlanta. By the way, just quick ups. Kamara is on pace to break the NFL record held by Christian McCaffrey for the most catches by a running back. On pace for over 1,150 receiving yards. That would smash Marshall Faulk's record for receiving yards by a running back. And we're talking about these yards after the catch complex in this game. And Jules, you mentioned he's free money. Alvin Kamara is 618 yards after the catch. That's 218 more than any other player in football. So just ridiculous. And I liked what you said about Latavius Murray. He's not, the fantasy points haven't been there, but he is seeing some volume, double-digit touches in 8 of 9 games for Latavius this year. What about these wide receivers? What do you think, Bri? I'm glad Jimbo's not here because he would just end up on Marquez Callaway in this conversation. But for Michael Thomas, is he still a wide receiver one for you without Drew Brees? What he's put on tape this year, I just think it's interesting. What do you think of Michael Thomas?
It's hard to just go by the tape that he's shown because he doesn't have a ton of tape so far this year. But if you just go by his talent, it's really hard to get away from him. I mean, if you drafted him as pretty much the first wide receiver off the board this year, or maybe you traded for him on the cheap while he was injured. But if you did that, you traded him to start him. I mean, you're going to start him in a matchup against the Falcons, who are giving up all those yards and stuff to the wide receiver position. If it's Jameis in there, he likes to chuck the ball. He'll chuck it. He's going to target Thomas, the number one guy in that offense. So yeah, I'm going to roll him out. I don't have super high hopes, but he's right on that borderline wide receiver one for me.
So I think it's interesting. These guys could be, not ridiculously high ownership in a DFS setting. So would you rather have Michael Thomas in this game or Julio Jones on the other side?
Oh, I probably That's tough. I'd go Julio. I think it's just a little bit more stable. In my lineup for my playing in fantasy, but if it's DFS in a tournament, I'm going to go with Thomas.
Yeah, I think that's actually the correct answer for sure. Speaking of tough and all that, like, what about Emmanuel Sanders? He was impressing. I know there was injuries, no Michael Thomas in the lineup, but 4 straight games over 13.5 PPR points. Before that Week 10 dud, Manny Sanders had just 1 target in that revenge game last week against San Fran. But yeah, you mentioned Atlanta is just a great spot for wide receivers in fantasy this year. And, you know, it's interesting because we all love Manny Sandy. We know he's a little bit aged, but he always seems to, you know, provide a boon for a wide receiver 3 slot in a fantasy lineup. What do you think, Tyler?
Oh no, guys.
Or does this offense, Michael Thomas?
Yeah, for me, guys, it hinges on this on who's playing quarterback. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys, if you're experiencing a little bit of a delay there. I'll try to be quick, but yeah, with Taysom Hill there, I don't think he can have 1 viable pass catcher, let alone 2. I'm really, really, really off the Taysom Hill thing. It's shades of Ronnie Brown at quarterback back in the Miami days. Like, I want nothing to do with it. If Jameis Winston plays, that's gonna be it. But like, I don't know. Like, that's the whole thing about Taysom is that he surprises people with mismatches and exploitation. But if he's out there for 45, 50 snaps, like, bring everybody in. You know what I mean? Like, let's get him close to the line of scrimmage, because I don't know if Taysom is the guy that can throw the ball. I just don't know. I've never seen it. Like, if you guys have tape on it, share it, please, because I don't.
Yeah, it's definitely like only things we've seen when it comes to like a sample you could even put together and comprise something to argue for him would be his preseason numbers. But again, you're just relying so heavily on his rushing production in even that setting. So wide receivers, great spot for Atlanta this year. So are tight ends, guys. They've allowed over 65 yards receiving to tight ends per game. Tight ends have scored 8 touchdowns in 9 games against Atlanta. So after Jared Cook gave us a goose egg last week, are you guys ready to fire up the grill this week? Or does the fact that Adam Troutman having outsnapped Jared Cook in back-to-back weeks now, does that mean that no tight end's going to be fantasy viable, even with this spectacular strength of schedule? What do you think, Jeff?
I'm right there with the other guys where I don't know if I can trust it. It's a hard question just because of how thin tight end is right now. You kind of want to take a gamble on Jared Cook. But yeah, I just, if Jameis is the quarterback, I think I would trust it. But I could honestly see Jameis playing quarterback, but then Taysom playing tight end.
Yeah.
You know, in different.
Totally,
packages.
yeah. Like, you almost have
So
3 tight ends to account for.
I don't know if I can trust Cook.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just go to the Atlanta Falcons here because I'm going a little long. Sorry, guys. Matt Ryan, ranked as a top 12 quarterback every damn week. He scored as a top 12 quarterback just 4 of 9 times this season. He averages over 25 points per game in those 4 games. In the other 5 games, he averages under 13 fantasy points. His 4 top 12 games have come against Seattle, Dallas, Minnesota, and Denver. And the Falcons head into a pretty tough stretch of their schedule starting this week. So, Jules, what do you think? Like, is Matt Ryan a quarterback 1 this week, and is he going forward?
I think back end, QB 10 to 12. I think he could end up in that 15 range as well. I think you can probably do better in single quarterback leagues, but in 2 QB leagues, I'm rolling him out there. No doubt about it.
Yeah, and as always, he is a top 10 quarterback in expert consensus ranking, but that strength of schedule. I mean, in the last 3 games against New Orleans, he averages just 17.2 fantasy points. Falcons get the quarterback stingy Raiders for fantasy next week. Saints, they get the Chargers, so that's a good one, but the Bucks and Chiefs in fantasy football championship week. So, if that strength of schedule scares me for the quarterbacks, I think Todd Gurley just scares the hell out of me because of that strength of schedule and his usage, reliance on touchdowns, et cetera, and so forth. But Jeff, I want to go to you. Do you have any info on Calvin Ridley? Like, I think he got cleared to play, but his health and some thoughts for us, maybe?
Yeah, so he was cleared to play, although I did read a report that the staff is going to check him pregame. So just, if you have Calvin Ridley, make sure to watch reports tomorrow morning, just in case. I expect him to play, and I'm playing him this is the way I view it with guys like this, where they're tested in practice. If the staff viewed any risk on his foot, any high re-injury risk, they wouldn't be playing him. He wouldn't be active. So I feel safe to say I'm playing him as a high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2, just slightly lowered from his typical with the injury risk.
Yeah, I like that. You just downgrade a little bit. Hopefully you build in a little bit of stability or upside elsewhere, depending on how your matchup looks that week. What do you guys think about Julio and Calvin Ridley? Like, both these guys are top 12 in points per game in PPR and fantasy right now. Maybe I'll go to you, Julian. What are your thoughts on this passing game with Ridley and Julio? Like, can they perform as wide receiver ones at the same time?
I think we get, 1-1 and 1-2 between the two of these guys. I think it'll alternate as to who it is, but I think you can throw them both in your lineups and feel confident every week. I'm not benching Julio or Calvin. And I'll even put Hayden Hurst up there. I'm throwing him in my lineup as well as, one of the few consistent tight end options that we have in the fantasy football landscape.
Yeah, totally. And that was the good point that I thought Jeff made about the tight ends. Like, he started giving his thoughts on Jared Cook and Troutman, and then he's like, but it's such a good matchup, it's hard to say no. It's I hate tight end.
It's
Julio
tough.
and Ridley, I think, I know, it's just brutal. And that's why I think we just pray we have guys like Julio and Ridley in our lineup, because these guys, they've had over 60% of the team's end zone targets. Like, they soak up the high leverage work in this offense. Over 70% of the deep ball targets have gone to just Julio and Ridley. By the way, week 1, they were both top 8 wide receivers. And after Julio returned from injury, week 6, both guys were top 10. Week 7, they were both top 18. Given Julio and Ridley, they've both had lots of success, guys, against the Saints. And Jules, you kind of skated the question, if you don't mind me saying. So I'll go to Brian because you don't want to answer it. So who do you pick between Julio and Ridley in like a DFS lineup this week?
I'm gonna go with Julio. I think he's got a higher ceiling.
Just to be
Does
clear,
anyone know
I
who
roll that
Lattimore
way
is
too.
going to cover? Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see, New Orleans or
I don't think it'll
like, you got to
matter.
think he covers Julio.
I think he probably he covers
Ding, ding.
Julio, but
So one
think
comment on Marshawn Lattimore. He's actually been dealing with an abdominal injury. I think he's going to be a little slowed. And I had that thought when you guys were talking about whether you roll MT or Julio. I feel pretty good about Julio this week, especially if Lattimore's on him. I think he's going to be a little slowed and limited by that abdominal injury.
very fair point. Fire up Julio and
Well,
DFS.
you even look at what they've
For you
done.
guys,
Yeah, and both of them have just go for
do you know if Quan's playing? Has
You're
that gone
cutting
through?
out
He
there,
should have
dude.
passed this.
Traquan
Oh,
Smith.
sorry.
Traquan.
No, Quan Alexander on linebacker. Like,
Oh.
is he up to speed since the trade? Like, where is that? Like, the Mario and him now? Ooh, like, that's a pretty potent 1-2 linebacker. That's the thing that the Saints have missed forever. Like, that defense is going to get stout with those two.
That is such a mean combo of like an athletic guy and then like a Mike linebacker. Oh, it's so dope. I just want to mention, like, in 4 games, Calvin Ridley has scored over 20 points per game in fantasy against the Saints. Julio, let's say since 2017, because that's when Marshawn Lattimore was drafted, he averages over 17 points per game. So both have had just a ton of success against them. Does anybody want any other wide receiver in this offense? Like, Russell Gage has really cooled off, but that Olamide Zacchaeus has flashed at times. What do you guys think there?
No, he's flashed when Ridley or Julio's been out. But other than that, I'm not. If one of them were out, then I'd fire him up. But other than that, he's on the bench.
Yeah, so I think we could almost drop Russell Gage. Like, almost 50% of his points in fantasy came in just weeks 1 and 2 alone. One more guy I wanted to ask about. I'll go to you, Tyler, because Jules, you kind of gave your opinion on this. Hayden Hurst. I mean, double digits in PPR in 4 games straight. Really good matchup this week against New Orleans. But the rest of the way, how much do you like Hayden Hurst with this slate of the tight end position? Like, it seems like we're ready to put him in this higher tier. Do you think he belongs there?
Honestly, the guy hasn't played a ton of NFL football, and I really like what I've seen from the guy. He just needs that target share. It needs to come there. And I'm not going to rely on guys. Like, we're getting close to teams making playoff pushes, both in fantasy and in the NFL. I try to rely on those really steady producing guys, but I do like what I've seen from him. And also, if for whatever reason Ridley gets held out, like, he's a sneaky good start, especially because the volume, you could see that. I think Gage is banged up a little bit too. So, I mean, I like Hayden Hurst to do something there, but once again, like, that linebacking core, I don't know if Quan gets there and he's up to speed, like, is he going to be on the tight end? And it just, like, there's too many questions to really answer.
Yeah, and that's why I went to you, because I thought that was just such a great point about Quan. And I've never even made up my mind about Quan Alexander. Like, I love him and everything. He misses some tackles here and there. He's just such an upside boom bust defender. But I love to watch him play, you know. So do you still have somebody like Gronkowski who's more involved in his offense, Hunter Henry? Who would you rather have, like, out of those three rest of the season?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm going to go Hunter Henry. I'm a big fan of what I'm seeing with the Chargers right now. I think Herbert's something special. Like, I'm a big fan of him. I'm so bullish on Herbert. Like, I don't know, him and Burr are 1A and 1B for me out of this class. So I'm going Hunter Henry for now and for future out of those guys for sure.
Right on. Yeah, I felt like I was the only one in the world who loves Hunter Henry. Okay, guys, I'm going to move on here. Those were games that had lots of goings on, I think. Depending on how much time we have to hit the Monday Night Football matchup with the Rams and Tampa Bay, we might have spent some time on that one. But I'll go quicker on these matchups. The next one is probably a better real-life football game anyways than it is a game to attach to for fantasy.
Hey, Ty,
so I'm going to go to Julian's set. Yeah.
Right before we get in that, let's get a word from our sponsor for tonight, Monkey Night Fight, and then we'll pick up on we'll pick up on that next matchup.
If you want the best DFS player prop games in the industry, jump onto Monkey Knife Fight. Monkey Knife Fight is sweeping the nation right now, and we at True North are proud to be doing it along with them. They've got games for all sports and skill levels that are sure to keep you on the edge of your seat, with endless opportunity to watch your winnings pile up. With our promo code TNFF, Monkey Knife Fight will match your first deposit up to $50. So sign up now with our promo code and you can get up to $50 of free money to start making some bank. Again, that's monkeyknifefight.com, and the promo code is TNFF at your first deposit to start playing today.
All right.
We're back.
I think Ty's... Is he there?
Ty, you frozen? Ty?
Yeah.
You there,
All
buddy?
right.
Can you guys hear me?
The host isn't here.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I cannot hear you guys.
Can you hear us? No?
Oh, dear.
You can't hear
What have I
us?
done?
I'm not the only guy experiencing some technical difficulty.
All right, well, we can get into this. The Packers at the Colts. Good for fantasy, but not great for great for real life, not great for fantasy though. Classic offense versus defense. Packers scoring the third most in the fantasy football landscape with 30 points per game, and the Colts allow the fourth least fantasy points per game as a total, under 20 points. So, Brian, where do you land on this? Is there any pieces you really like in this, or are you kind of staying away from this?
There's a lot of pieces in this that you're going to play regardless. And you're the way he's been playing, you're going to roll out Rodgers. You're going to roll out Devontae Adams. Actually, Jeff, what do you have to say? How's Adams' ankle looking? Because a lot of people, I'm sure, are wondering about that.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, he was. Actually, let me double check on his practice status, but he is good to go. He wasn't even listed on the final injury report, so the Packers already stated that he's playing. I have a mild, or I should say moderate injury risk for him. re-injuring it, just given ankle injuries. But I mean, if you have him, you're playing him.
Yeah.
Do you guys think
Are
that's
you with us again?
I am 100%. I don't know what happened, but I did the age-old solution where you turn it off and turn it on. So I just went out, went back in. Everything worked. You know, it must have been an omen because I poured myself a drink, and then when I said that I would not drink for this episode, and then the drinking gods hit me there. So whatever,
Yeah.
they're good. Get off my ass. You guys said you're playing Devontae Adams 100%. I mean, we talked about Travis Kelce, the points per game advantage. Look at Devontae Adams' points per game advantage. It's about the same between him and the wide receiver 2 as the wide receiver 2 and Emmanuel Sanders, who's like the wide receiver 40 something in points per game. It's just crazy. Do you guys think it's true for Aaron Rodgers though? Like the Colts give up the fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. The Colts have surrendered the fewest passing yards. Quarterbacks have thrown just 11 touchdown passes against them. Any chance you're sitting him, Jeff?
Rodgers, yeah, given the Devontae injury concern, and then it could very well be a low-scoring game overall. It could be more of like an Aaron Jones type game. I think I would have to have a strong pivot to bench Aaron Rodgers. But
well, I think it's a tough one. Like all I'll say is that Rodgers has had a shockingly easy strength of schedule. Like his only tough matchup all season was that game against Tampa Bay when he scored under 4 fantasy points. So I think it's funny. Like actually Brady won that matchup earlier in the year. So tell me, do you want Rodgers this week or Brady at Los Angeles at the Rams?
Man, Rams have been stinking tough recently.
Yeah, that's probably not a great one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough.
What about Rodgers or Matt Ryan, who's playing in that last game we talked about against the Saints?
I think I would still go Rodgers.
Yeah. So Rodgers definitely probably still in almost everybody's lineups. I think Brady and Rodgers both have terrific strength of schedules in the fantasy football playoffs. By the way, only Kyler Murray has more top 12 performances than A-Rod this year. So it's hard to bench that guy. Anybody want to go on Aaron Jones? Like broken record time, tough matchup for this elite Packers player.
I mean, you're rolling Aaron Jones out no matter what. I can't justify sitting him. And so, I'd be way more upset with myself if I leave him on my bench and, he goes for 120 yards and a touchdown and scorches this defense, which I do think is possible, right? You look at the opponents that this team's played and you got the Jags, Jets, Browns, Bengals, Lions, Ravens, right? Only one of those matchups is a plus matchup for your run game. And even for the quarterbacks, right? We look at Aaron Rodgers' schedule that he's had, he's had a really easy schedule, but I think this is a make or break game for him, right? Let's see what you're actually made of and prove yourself against a great defense and vice versa, right? Prove yourself against a great offense. So this should be a fun game to watch from both sides.
Yeah, I only brought up Aaron Jones because I wanted to mention he gets the Detroit Lions, the Carolina Panthers, and Tennessee Titans weeks 14 to 16. I think Aaron Jones is going to go Derrick Henry on folks with that strength schedule in the fantasy football playoffs.
I think you're right.
Anybody, do you guys think a second running back could come back into the fold, though? Like, will there be a flex play from Jamal Williams, Tyler Ervin? Will they try and get A.J. Dillon involved going down the stretch?
Not in this game.
I don't feel as good saying that for Jamal Williams as someone like J.D. McKissick. I would rather bank on a J.D. McKissick type versus Jamal Williams.
Yeah, you and Alex Smith both.
Give me Naheem Hines.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So hold your horses there. What I just wanted to ask, is Alan Lazard back? Is the alien lizard back after core muscle surgery? Because we know how conservative this Packers, medical staff is.
Yeah, they haven't determined his status yet. He's listed as questionable. I think they're going to roll out more MVS for at least this week.
Really? Yeah, that sucks. I know it's cheating, but in 3 games, he's the wide receiver 11 in points per game. And he was seeing deep ball targets, red zone work. I mean, he had 17% of the team's total targets. He was a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy when he went down. So say he plays, Brian, would you fire him up as a wide receiver 3 or a flex play, or are we back to this debate that is as old as time, MVS versus Alan Lazard going forward?
I wouldn't fire him up in his first game back, but if he gets out on the field and he shows me that he's running good and moving good, then I'll fire him up again. But I'm not going to take that risk right away. The first game back, there's probably someone that can pivot and get similar production from on your bench.
So are we firing up MVS, who was the wide receiver 4 overall last week?
I'm not.
Can he go 3 weeks in a row? I mean, I don't think that can happen. He's got a bust.
The drops
soon,
are going
right?
to come back to him.
Yeah, like he even dropped passes last week. He had I remember watching that game. Yeah, he had one every week, but he had a good game for fantasy. But when you actually watch the game, I'm like, man, this guy's dropping passes all over the field. Like he dropped a third and 2 slant or a crosser route. It was right in his hands. Like he can't drop that kind of stuff in the NFL. I just don't think that Aaron Rodgers trusts him the way that he trusts Lazard. And once Lazard is back, I think he takes over that wide receiver 2 role. And MVS moves back to, he'll still be a boom bust wide receiver 3 type of play, but he's just not going to see any kind of volume.
Yeah, and I think it's an important one because since Matt LaFleur took over, there's a lot less 3 wide receiver sets, if any, on Green Bay. So we definitely saw that bear out early in the season where MVS was way behind Lazard in snap counts. And you alluded to it. I just think he'll be way more efficient on the deep targets. Like MVS is just 4 shy of Tyreek Hill for the league lead in deep ball targets. This guy should be like a top 10 wide receiver, not the wide receiver 41 in PPR. So I just think, Lazard, he had just 4 deep ball targets, which was barely top 20, but he had the second most receiving yards off deep ball targets when he went down with that injury. I think he's still number 1 among wide receivers in fantasy football points per expectation. What do you guys think of Robert Tonyan? He's still the tight end 9 overall right now, but is Bobby T even remotely startable in this tough matchup? What do you think, Tyler? I see you shaking your head no.
That's a no-go for me, guys. I don't know. There's a couple points that in this game that for me, for Rodgers, the only person benching him is Olivia Munn. Let's not forget that Xavier Rhodes, Devontae Adams knows him well from his days in Minnesota. I honestly think he's going to
playing great.
There's a corner in the game that can stop him. And yeah, he is, but I think that Adams knows him too well. I think he's going to eat his lunch. And then with Aaron Jones, you can't bench him. There's just too many injuries right now at the running back position to go away from them. Those are the only guys I'm starting in a Packer uniform.
Yeah, totally. I think Tonyan, there's no way you're starting him. 37% of his fantasy points came in week 4. And he, since that in 5 games, he has 0 touchdowns. He had 5 touchdowns in the first 4 games. And he gets the Colts this week, who are the only team in football to have not given up a touchdown to the tight end position, which I think is just crazy. So if we go to the other side of the ball here really quick with the Colts, is anybody starting Phillip Rivers anytime ever? Just checking. So should the same be said for the Colts running backs then, boys? Should we start with Nyheim Hines? He is the highest scoring Colts running back in fantasy after all. Actually, I want to hit Jonathan Taylor first, just because I can't believe that coming out of the bye week, he's had 3 awful games straight, under 40 yards from scrimmage, under 10 PPR points in all 3 games, and the whole did he get benched fiasco after that early fumble against the Ravens. So do we think the work's going to come back? Do we need to face reality here? Because you don't have to start Jonathan Taylor per expert consensus rankings. Where do you value him, Jeff? Running back 2, running back 3?
This is painful to talk about because I'm a huge JT stan. I would say until we see it with Jonathan Taylor, I would say for me at least, he's not playable. I read a report on Tom Rathman. It's not necessarily Frank Reich who's calling which running backs are going to be on the field outside of, he has the first 15 plays scripted with which running back. Beyond that, it's Tom Rathman calling it out. And last week he wanted Nyheim Hines, mixture of it being his birthday and Hines was balling out. Flat out, Hines looks better. So for me, I can't start JT until I see him do well.
Yeah, like Hines has defined that whole shot out of cannon kind of thing last couple of weeks. Like, I will say this is the game, right? Like Green Bay is a blow up spot for running backs. They allowed third most fantasy points to running backs. Green Bay's allowed 15 touchdowns to running backs this year. Only the Lions have allowed more. And we always crave more work in the passing game. Like Jonathan Taylor has caught 22 of 24 targets this year. He actually leads the team in yards after the catch on 11 fewer catches than Nyheim Hines. So not surprising that the doctor loves the guy who was super durable through college, with all those carries. But I also love Jonathan Taylor. I know we all do. Jules, I'll get to you because I kind of gave you very little time on your Green Bay Packers there. But are you starting Jonathan Taylor or are you starting Nyheim Hines over him?
No, I would definitely be starting Hines over JT. And it feels gross, I wasn't super high on Taylor heading into the fantasy season like a lot of players were, but I didn't expect this. I still thought there'd be volume there, and Hines he's getting that pass catching work, and he's just explosive, man. They put him in as this guy to just like you hit the nail on the head when you said he gets fired out of a cannon, because he really does. He's just got that burst, and I think that's what that offense needs sometimes. And like you said, Jeff, they're just going to roll with what feels good that week. And I think Hines is the best option for this offense right now, right? Even like when we look back with Phillip Rivers with the Chargers and what he was able to do with Austin Eckler and out of the backfield, like, Nyheim Hines, like this just screams play me,
And the running back market share has certainly gone with Phillip Rivers to the Indianapolis Colts. Expert consensus ranking agrees with you, Jules. Nyheim Hines is ranked ahead of Jonathan Taylor. Maybe we can pit some running backs going forward here tonight against Colts running backs. I think the matchup is very bright for the pass catchers. You know what I mean? When you're going against Green Bay, they give up 6 catches per game to running backs, and running backs have scored 4 receiving touchdowns. I think going forward, guys, no matter what, no matter who you think prevails, like go buy them, or to show that it might even be possible that both of these guys, because of the run-heavy scheme, could perform as top 24 running backs. The Packers this week, it's the third easiest matchup for running backs in fantasy football. The next 4 weeks after this, Tennessee, Houston, Las Vegas, and then Houston again. Those are all plus matchups or elite matchups for running backs in fantasy. So, I shit on Phillip Rivers there. I always have, always will. What about the wide receivers, though? The guys he's throwing to? Because Green Bay is a pretty tough matchup for wide receivers, especially, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff, that Jair Alexander is set to return. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. And I was going to ask you guys. So Jair Alexander is expected back. He practiced full, cleared from concussion protocol. Are you guys downgrading Michael Pittman? Who do you think he covers more so? Well, Brian.
I have no idea. I don't follow as much of the IDP side, but let me just go to PFF here.
Yeah, but Bry, who would you cover over Pittman or T.Y. Hilton?
Right, I would put Jair.
I think he's on Pittman.
I think Pittman's the better talent, especially these days. But I don't know. Maybe they just send him out and tell him to cover the vet. I have no idea.
Like take away the lid lifter. I think it's a really difficult question. I don't even know if the Packer or the Colts know at this point, to be completely honest. Like maybe they're assuming it's Michael Pittman, but I don't think it'd be crazy to literally just take away that deep threat. Not that T.Y. Hilton's like offered that too much, but yeah, I think like would you agree, Tyler, that yeah. Like Tyler, do you agree that Mr. Pittman is the wide receiver to own for the Colts?
I think so. Like he looked really good last week, getting in and out of his breaks for a big guy. I liked what he was able to do with the ball in his hands. I literally saw in one of my industry leagues, I saw T.Y. Hilton get traded for 2022 third round pick today. So I think that the industry's off him. I also think kind of the Colts are off him as well. I don't know what's up with them. I don't think that down Charlie at quarterback helps anybody either. But yeah, Michael Pittman's got to be the guy moving forward.
Yeah. And T.Y. Hilton, under 7 points per game in PPR, 7 catches over the last 3 weeks, hasn't hit 7-0 receiving yards in any game this year. Still has the highest target share on the team, too. Still leads the Colts in air yards. Still no touchdowns for T.Y. Hilton. Do you think there's any resurrection coming, Jules, or is he like actually waiver fodder at this point?
Man, it's ugly. It's ugly. Like, I'm not putting T.Y. in my lineup anywhere. You know, I think in redraft leagues, like if you only got 5 or 6 bench spots, I think I'm dropping them. You know, otherwise you're holding on.
Yeah,
to
because you're not going to start them.
No, exactly. Right. Like there's so many guys I'd pick up off of waivers over T.Y. Hilton.
What about Zach Pascal? If he's on waivers in a start 3 wide receiver multi-flex league, like Buddy leads the team in targets. He has 6 end zone targets. Nobody else has more than 2 on the Colts. Any interest in Zach Pascal?
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a position you got to go and pick up Zach Pascal, then I think he's one of the best guys you can go and get there. You know, a cheap option you can just grab off waivers. Excuse me. Who he's gotten? I think he's had more than 5 targets in all 4 of the past 5 games. So yeah, I'll throw him out there. What do you guys think? Anyone else here on Zach Pascal? Or are you guys off that train? Like deep, 3 wide receiver, 2 flex type of leagues.
Yeah, I've been starting him in a super deep league, but that's only because, I mean, it's 14 teams and like 14 starting positions, and he's done okay, but it has to be deep, and he has to catch a touchdown if it's not deep. So I'm not banking on it.
Like Ty said, though, 6 red zone targets, which is leading the team, surprisingly, right? They do tend to get the tight ends involved down in the red zone. We saw Eric Ebron out of the backfield a couple weeks ago, and Mo Alley Cox is coming back. Do you have any injury update on him, Jeff? Is he all clear to go? I know he played last week, but there might have been something that popped up this week. I thought I saw him on an injury report.
I missed the name. Sorry.
Mo Alley Cox.
Oh, actually, I didn't see him on the report. I know Jack Doyle is active.
He's active?
He is. He's active?
Yeah,
he cleared today.
Oof.
Check
that gets
this
ugly.
out. The snaps on the season, Jack Doyle, 58%, Mo Alley Cox, 49%, Trey Burton, 49%. All 3 of the tight ends have 2 end zone targets. God-awful matchup, too.
So gross. Yeah, not great.
Hey, one note, too, on, with Pittman coming back, week 10, he actually had, I'm looking on footballguys.com, he had 3 red zone chances compared to Pascal's 2. So I'll be curious if Pittman's more red zone chances than Pascal moving forward.
Well, you'd think they would, right? He's a big body receiver. He's one of the only guys they got other than those tight ends that can do that up down there. So he reminded me a lot of Mike Williams coming into the season, and that's kind of what we're seeing as well. So I'm hoping that he can put what Mike Williams could be actually out on a fantasy football field.
Without injuries.
Yeah, just as a wide receiver 1, right? Like, the guy had a 1,000-yard season 3 years ago, and then the next year had 10 touchdowns, right? Like, you put those seasons together and you've got a wide receiver 1, right? So, I look at Michael Pittman and that's what I hope for on this team, but I'm not sure it happens with Phillip Rivers. Coincidentally, didn't happen with Mike Williams either.
Oh, dude, and the downfield, like the deep passing was just so atrocious to Mike Williams from Phillip Rivers last year. That's why we see what we've seen in Indianapolis. That's why we predicted such a run-heavy scheme, because he had like twice as many interceptions on deep ball targets last year than any other quarterback.
Mm-hmm. You just can't do it.
Speaking of quarterback, yeah, exactly, yeah. So let's go away from this quarterback. Let's go to 2. This is going to be a heavy Jeff game I'm going to, boys. So Detroit Lions at Carolina Panthers. Panthers are slight favorites at home, despite their 3-7 record. The Lions are 4-5 somehow. I thought they were like 0-10, and the total is just 46.5. So we can kind of blow through this game, but people have tough choices to make. These are also 2 offenses scoring under 26 points per game. Both defenses allow over 26 points per game. So I just want to say that the Lions are, just brutal at points allowed. But in these matchups where the offenses concern us, the defenses should concern us less, in my opinion. That's why we see these low totals. So I think this low total could be doubly true because Jeff, do you want to just maybe dive into these quarterbacks in this game? Just some of the injuries we're dealing with in this Lions-Panthers matchup?
Yeah. So I'll start with Stafford on Detroit's side. He's dealing with a ligament tear in his thumb, throwing side. He is expected to play, but I wouldn't be surprised if he plays with a brace, or even if they tape it. But I think that's going to significantly affect his accuracy, his target depth. So obviously Kenny Galladay's ruled out. I don't know if I would want to play Marvin Jones. I actually like TJ Hawkinson. Oh, and both are expected to play. Marvin Jones and TJ Hawkinson. There are some questions on the injuries. They are both expected to play. So I think I like Hawkinson more just from a target depth perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just can't believe how many injuries are in this game. Like, I think throwing the ball won't be the first choice for Carolina, especially, like, let's stay with Carolina really quick. Like, if the home team Panthers, if they can establish the run, I think it'll be an ugly game all around for fantasy purposes because the Panthers are bottom 10 in rushing this year, but the Lions allow over 140 rushing yards per game, fourth worst. And you mentioned Kenny Galladay is out. Like, hips don't lie, and some of the injuries on the offensive lines as well for both of these teams. So if I switch gears to Detroit here, because for Matt Stafford, I just wanted to mention that the splits with Kenny Galladay aren't that severe. Like, he does average 2.5 more fantasy points per game in the 5 games with Kenny Galladay this year. But, since 2017, he's played 10 games without him. He scores the same with or without him. So I am more worried, like you, Jeff, about how he looks, especially after what we saw from Matt Stafford, when he missed that week when he was on the COVID list. So assuming he plays, Tyler, do you think Matt Stafford is like a top 12 quarterback, or where does he fall for you in rankings in a week that is pretty hard to find good quarterbacks to start?
Yeah, I'm thinking a high end quarterback too, sort of thing. Like he's gonna get his floor. The ceiling's not gonna be there. With Swift being out, Galladay being out, and kind of like, I mean, is Marvin Hall their most explosive player on offense right now?
Absolutely. Yeah. He is. He's my favorite Marvin on that team. So Tyler, would you start, say, Stafford or Wentz, who's going at Cleveland this week?
Honestly, I'm going Wentz. I'm waiting for this Goddard Raider. I mean, if he can get somebody to block for like 2 seconds, if he can literally get 2 seconds, like, this guy's going to go off. He's one of my dynasty, like, go and get this guy right now. Quarterback, especially in Superflex, go get Wentz. Like, it's going to play dividends. The talent's there. He's a beast. Like, I mean, he gets beat, and he takes it. Like, I mean, thank goodness for him being a redhead. No, just joking. But, I mean, he's used to it. Like, the guy's just tough as nails. Like, and he just plays lights out.
No, so true. And I am surrounded at True North Fantasy Football by Wentz truthers. What about Joe Burrow? He has a tough matchup against Washington. Would you start Burrow or Stafford? Because I like what you said about Wentz there. It's kind of like you're chasing a ceiling that Stafford almost doesn't have, right? Is that, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's my same thing. Like, I'm going Burrow as well. Like, it's undeniable. T. Higgins is something special. Like, T. Higgins is I don't know, even with mixing out, like, it doesn't matter. Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, that pair is much better than anything that Stafford's going to have. Plus, Burrow's not injured. So, to me, that's an easy call.
So, Jeff, I didn't even throw to you there for the running backs. I'm just going to fly into it here. But DeAndre Swift is unceremoniously been stripped from our disposal this week in a dream matchup against Carolina. So talking about these running backs, guys, Jules, is it as simple as a pass catcher versus an early down guy? Both are running back threes, are both flex plays. Like, what are your thoughts on Adrian Peterson and Kerryon Johnson?
Yeah, I think we see a lot of AP. I think they're going to rely on the run game here. And if they can get a run game going, I don't think we see a lot of Stafford. I don't have him even as a top 15 quarterback this week because, I think that hand injury, it's going to be hard to throw with a torn ligament in your hand. I can't imagine trying to push the ball downfield. And, and plus you're without your two best offensive weapons. So, I think they try and pound the rock with AP and just try and get him going. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw 15, 20 touches tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yes, it's such a great matchup. I mean, they allow over 150 rushing yards to running backs per game. Carolina allows over 150 yards from scrimmage per game. Running backs have scored rushing touchdowns, 10 of them this year against the Panthers. But the reason I would, not dismiss Kerryon Johnson as a flex play is nobody has allowed more receptions to running backs than the Carolina Panthers. Is anybody on Team Kerryon this week?
Ask him for a friend.
Sneaky. He's sneaky. Like, I mean, in GPP plays, I think he's sneaky. It's not hard for him to go for X if he gets a touchdown, and let's not forget, if his thumb's hurt, he's not throwing the ball deep. It's going to be check down city, and that's not AP's game. So I mean, there's a game script and there's a narrative here that you can see Kerryon Johnson getting 8 to 12 meaningful touches in the touchdown. It's just matters what he does with them.
Yeah, and it sounds so silly, so inconsequential, but if this was in Detroit and Detroit was like a 3-point favorite, maybe I would lean the other way. I just think the game script might fall a little bit. I think what I wanted to say also is that it's actually a really polarizing strength of schedule upcoming for the Detroit running back. So hopefully Swift, because he is I think it's just a concussion, right? Like he should clear concussion protocol by next game, but get Houston next week. So it sucks that he misses Carolina, but they get Houston next week. He also has Green Bay and Tennessee weeks 14 and 15, but also some really tough matchups at Chicago in week 13, Tampa Bay week 16. The only teams, by the way, allowing more points to running backs than the Packers, than the Lions are the Packers, Texans, and Panthers. So the running backs for the Lions get literally the 3 best possible matchups, and then the 8 easiest with Tennessee. But those are really tough ones in week 13 and fantasy football championship week. So do you guys think DeAndre Swift is there a buy opportunity here if your trade deadlines haven't passed?
I don't think anyone's trading him. That's the that's the tough part.
Nobody's moving him.
You can always buy high on guys, always.
That's true. You did go higher.
I did it with Derrick Henry last year.
I would say everything we're saying for this game holds true for next week as well, because they play on Thanksgiving. Anytime you have some of those latent symptoms show up with a concussion, he got the concussion most likely. They're kind of quiet on this, but most likely on Sunday, not Wednesday at practice. So that's what I'll be monitoring is, will he be able to practice Monday, Tuesday, or even Wednesday? He has until technically Thursday morning to clear, but the game's at 9:30 in the morning on Thursday. So at least it's the morning game. But
there's 3 games next week, right? On Thursday. 3. There's 3 on Thursday, right? So check your lineups for that. That's I almost forgot about that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Book it off work right now.
Yeah.
So what are you guys saying for Marvin Jones, who's scoring 11.5 points per game in PPR? In 4 games without Kenny G this year, he goes from under 9 points per game to over 14.5 in PPR. If we included the Colts game that Golladay left early, it would be an even bigger split. But what do you guys think? Do you think Marvin Jones is a wide receiver 3 for people?
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think you got to throw him
wide
out
receiver
there,
3 is not hard to get, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know if I'd start him over like an Emmanuel Sanders. Maybe I have some deep-seated bias against Marvin Jones. Maybe that's it. But I honestly, Marvin Hall is vulturing his deep touchdowns. You're literally banking on a 10-zone touchdown from Marvin Jones. I know last week he had like a season high in targets and receptions and all that, but I thought that was kind of the outlier game, and I think we will just see a lot of short passing. I honestly think their team leader in receiving right now is Danny Amendola, believe it or not. So I think Danny Amendola might be somebody I'd be more obliged to start because I know exactly what I'm going to get.
He's out.
Oh, my boy.
Amendola's out, yeah.
Well, then
they pulled up Mohamed Sanu from the practice squad to fill his spot, but it'll be Marvin Hall.
Yeah, me either.
Marvin Hall and Quintez Cephas.
Yeah. So thank God Jimbo has been here. We'd be down.
The one thing to remember that. Oh, sorry guys, the delay's killing me. I'm sorry. Yeah, the one thing to remember too is if AP gets a start and he's getting the majority of the touches, I could see Marvin Hall getting loose for 1 or 2 over the top as that defense starts to crowd the line.
So we all love TJ Hawkinson. We've mentioned him a few times here. He's the tight end 3 right now. TJ Hawkinson leads the Lions in targets and receptions this season. Jules, do you want Hawkinson or Noah Fant the rest of the way?
Oh man, you know my love for Noah Fant, but if we're
they'll
talking,
always be compared to one another forever and forever.
Can you blame him though? I mean, same school, same round. I love Noah Fant's athletic profile, but if we're talking fantasy football points, give me TJ Hawkinson all day. You know, this guy's consistent. He's out there every single week. He's getting volume. He sees work between the 20s. He's a red zone target for Matt Stafford. He trusts him. Like, it's easy for me. You know, I want Hawk out there as a top 5 tight end.
And I think that was an easy question. So what about Mark Andrews or TJ Hawkinson?
Yeah, and I actually lean Hawk too. You know, I want that consistency. I find it, you know, when the tight end spot is so difficult to find somebody that you can rely on, that if you can find a guy that can give you a floor of 10 points in a PPR league, you know, I'm happy. 50 yards and 5 catches. And then if they score, you know, that gives you such a boost to your team. But you know, you just get that reliable floor, and then you can fill out your flex spots and your other positions with more high variance players.
Yeah, and I think what I love about TJ Hawkinson that I hate about Marvin Jones is that he isn't touchdown dependent. I find, you know, if you look at the splits in the 5 games that he hasn't scored, TJ Hawkinson still is averaging 9 points per game in PPR. So that's pretty impressive for a tight end, especially.
Yeah.
I guess, like, if we look at the other side of this, what's going on with the quarterback situation? I don't even have it down here. Do we know who's starting at quarterback for Carolina yet, or are they kind of leaving that up in the air?
Yeah, not yet. It's a true game time decision. They worked Teddy Bridgewater out this morning, and he actually looked pretty good. But man, that's risky. If you're considering starting Teddy Bridgewater in fantasy, I would not. I would pivot.
Well, if you're
given the risk of re-injury in game.
Yeah. Well, if you're predicting it, like, who do you think plays at quarterback then if Bridgewater misses? Is it going to be Walker? Because these are very different quarterbacks. They're backups.
Yeah, 100% PJ Walker. Just knowing Matt Rule's tendencies, he loves his Temple guys. PJ, not a lot of people know, but PJ Walker played at Temple with Rule.
I did not know that at all.
Yeah, so
all I know is he was lighting it up in the AAF.
Yeah. So okay, so going back to you, if PJ Walker starts, how does that change your viewpoint of the Carolina wide receivers?
Well, you know, I don't know if anything would change my view on anything in this game because of how juicy the matchup is, and because I just think it's going to be a lot of yards after the catch when it comes to DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, and Robbie Anderson. And then obviously I hope this is the game for Mike Davis. That would be my big one. What do you guys think? Like, have we cooled on Mike Davis, or do we think it's top 12 Mike Davis season while Christian McCaffrey is out?
Yeah, I love Mike Davis, man. I love this matchup. It's juicy, and you know, I expected big things last week and he let me down, but I would confidently roll him out there again as probably an RB1, but like, you know, if you've got him, he's probably the RB2 on your team, right? You pick this guy up off of waivers, right? So I think I'd feel super confident throwing him in there in that spot.
Yeah, injury wise, I view Mike Davis as a safe running back 2, like a low end running back 2. I think he's going to be a little limited in the receiving game.
Hope not, but I'd take your word for it.
Well, what's interesting is go for it, Jeff. Yeah.
It was his finger, right?
Yeah, dislocation.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing that I look at.
When did that happen?
Limit is last week.
Last game, yeah.
Last week, yeah. Because he's been pretty underwhelming for like 4 weeks straight. You know, like weeks 2 to 6, Mike Davis was the running back 2 overall. Only Alvin Kamara scored more fantasy points than Mike Davis over those 5 weeks. But since week 7, he's the running back 30 in PPR, and he scored between 8 and 9 fantasy points in all 4 of those games. So he's been very underwhelming. But, you know, crescendo time, Mike Davis is facing the Lions, which is the number 1 matchup for running backs in fantasy. They give up over 180 yards from scrimmage per game to running backs. third most rushing yards to running backs, the most receiving yards to running backs. So it's devastating that you say Mike Davis might be limited because of that finger in the receiving game. Do you think that would go to Curtis Samuel then, Jeff?
They could, yeah. I mean, they started using him a little bit more as a running back when CMC initially went out. So it could go to man, I'm blanking on his name. It's not Reggie Bonifant, but their backup Rodney. He's like their running back 5.
Who? Rodney Anderson?
Anderson?
Rodney Smith.
What? Oh yeah. That's correct.
Is that right? Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think Curtis Samuel is like that puzzle piece who just never fits for fantasy. It's so annoying. Like he's the wide receiver 30 on the year, only 1 point per game less than DJ Moore though. I think it's really interesting. What do you guys think of these wide receivers? Like we talk about them every week, so we don't have to like really dive into them. But you know, Robbie and DJ Moore, they're both top 24 guys, both ranked top 10 in receiving yards, top 10 in air yards, top 10 in yards after the catch, both of them. And quietly, all three of these wide receivers are scoring within 2.2 points per game of one another. So are you guys trying to just manipulate the market with these guys, or are you firing both of them up each week still with, with Robbie Anderson a little bit ahead of DJ Moore? How are we sitting there right now?
Yeah. All right, I'll go. I think both you can fire both these guys up, but I thought it was really interesting. You brought up Mike Davis's past 4 weeks is he's been kind of a bust for fantasy, but it's the time that Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore have both stepped up and had great fantasy games. So, I think there's a correlation there to look at is, who's it going to be? I think there's 4 viable fantasy options and 2 to 3 of them are going to be fantasy producers every week. But, at least one of them I think is going to be left out to dry. So trying to pick and choose who that's going to be is tough. But if I had to put money on it this week, I don't know, man. I think it's probably Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson, I think they do get Curtis Samuel involved in the backfield. And I think DJ Moore is proven that he can, he needs more targets and Matt Rule's getting them to him. We've seen it in the past couple games. So.
Yeah, and Jeff alluded to it, another Temple guy, obviously with Robbie Anderson, probably why he has 27% of the team's targets this year. It's insane. Another fun split, though, weeks 1 to 5, Robbie Anderson had 17.5 PPR points 4 times. He's under 15 points in PPR in 5 straight games since. Hasn't scored since week 1. I know he's a big positive touchdown regression candidate, but the downers that he's had in the last 5 games include a couple teams that he lit up earlier in the season. So teams, the league, it feels like they are adjusting a little bit. So I was thinking, should we be adjusting? Like, is everybody kind of back to he's a mid wide receiver too? Tyler, what do you think? You're one that hasn't weighed in on this whole debate with DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. So don't let your dynasty bias come into play too much here. But how do you see it with these two guys?
Honestly, I think that we expected a lot from Joe Brady, but when you're watching LSU back in the day, you kind of realize that man spreads the ball around a lot. You wonder who is going to be, it's kind of Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore have kind of been that Chase and Jefferson that we saw last year. For me, it's honestly a crapshoot week in and week out. I got to go with the talent. I'm a DJ Moore guy. If I had both guys sitting on waivers, I had to pick up and start one. It would be DJ Moore every single time. But I'm a dynasty guy, so that's totally biased. But I just think that I think that that's how the teams are scheming too. Is they're scheming to solve DJ Moore for a reason.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's like the least talked about complex inside this argument is that teams still respect DJ Moore a little bit more. And it's just the volume, which is just wild to say that we think Robbie will see more volume than DJ Moore. It's just absolutely blows my mind. So we touched on Curtis Samuel. Nobody's ever touched on Ian Thomas, except like, it's just crazy. The guy's running bazillion routes, but he gets no targets. So I guess we can move on. We got Pittsburgh Steelers at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Do we think this is going to be a really low scoring game? Because when the looting starts, Jeff.
when the looting starts. Threw me off there. Yeah, honest. Well, at least on Jacksonville's side. I don't think. I mean, Pittsburgh's defense is so dang good. I think James Robinson is still a very safe play. I know he's been banged up. He hasn't been dealing with a shoulder injury, but I don't expect that to limit him. He wasn't even on the injury report, so low concern there. I'm firing him up. But honestly, it's like, I mean, Pittsburgh's defense is so good with Chenault out. They really have to stop DJ Chark, you know? So I could see Pittsburgh putting up a good amount of points, and good luck choosing which wide receiver to play which week.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like you mentioned their defense, like the Jaguars' defense is brutal. They're allowing over 30 points per game, and I just think before we proclaim a shootout, though, it's just that without Gardner Minshew, this team scores like 22 points per game. That's seventh worst for the Jaguars, and yeah, teams are scoring just 19 points per game against Pittsburgh. I think it's going to be really low scoring. Like neither team plays super fast, and Pittsburgh. What I'm worried about, though, they just can't run the ball right now. After rushing for almost 130 yards per game over their first 6 games, the Steelers have averaged. So the Steelers, after averaging 130 over the first 6 games, Steelers have rushed for 48, 46, and 44 yards in their past 3 weeks. Like, that is just crazy. But on the other side of it, it should be an exercise in futility across the board for the Jaguars. So I think it's pretty crazy. And there's also some offensive line questions for Jacksonville as well. Mike Hilton is also playing for Pittsburgh, which is a guy who would have been covering Chenault should he have played. But do we see, with all this matchup stuff, all these 3 wide receivers? Brian, do you think Big Ben Roethlisberger is the top 12 wide receiver this week?
Top 12, yeah. I think he's definitely in play when you have those sort of weapons. How can you deny it, especially when the run game hasn't been getting going like it has? When one thing's not working, it's just going to lead to the other, and they've proven that they can throw on pretty much whoever they need to. You know, they're going to scheme up Claypool in interesting packages, and Juju's been catching pretty much everything that comes to him, and Deontay's looked good running his routes on the field. You know, they're a mismatch for whoever they go up against right now.
So how startable is he? Like, would you start Ben at Jacksonville, or are you starting Matt Ryan at the Saints?
No, I'm going to start Ben in that matchup for sure.
But would you start him over Deshaun Watson against the Patriots?
Yeah, I would. I know it could come down to if they get the running game going, and maybe Ben doesn't throw as many touchdowns, especially against a porous defense like that. But I think I'm going to play Ben against Deshaun Watson in that one.
Yeah, and I'm almost just trying to emphasize that we do have like a lot of really tough decisions at the quarterback position this week. Like we talked about with Aaron Rodgers against Indianapolis, that might be a guy you might consider benching for Ben Roethlisberger. As crazy as that sounds, as successful as Aaron Rodgers has been, and I know that it borders on the start your studs debate, but Ben is just so hot back-to-back games in these easy matchups, I grant, but this is an easy matchup too. But what are we doing with James Conner, guys? Like, what are we doing? Are we concerned, or are we still rolling him out as a top 12 running back?
One note on that, I just looked. Also on the Big Ben side, Pittsburgh the last 3 weeks against Baltimore, Dallas, and Cincinnati, they've given their wide receivers and tight ends combined more red zone chances than the running backs. So total targets. So that's where
it's almost. It's almost like
go.
Claypool is being used inside the 10-yard line as like an extension of the run game, and other parts of the field as well, and that lends to Ben's arm, right? Like Ben isn't the same Ben that he was years ago, for sure.
And it caps Connor's upside.
I got a bold prediction for you boys. Those safeties are banged up. Josh Jones was one of the bright spots for IDP at least all season for the Jags, and he's out. I think they get Wingard back this week. I don't know if he's going to get a full complement of snaps, but I'll almost guarantee there's something up the middle, goes for a big touchdown against those guys. Miles Jack's never really panned out. They're banged up with their safeties really bad. There's going to be a seam route for a big gainer. Now you just got to figure out who it's going to be. I can almost like that's cash.
And it is tricky. Like, you know, who is it going to be? Really quickly, James Conner, like running backs are scoring the 6th most points against Jacksonville this year. So it is a pretty a nice matchup. Hopefully you can get back on course, because the Ravens is who they play next week, and Pittsburgh gets the Colts in fantasy football championship week. So I just wanted to say that James Conner probably ain't winning anybody leagues this year. But yeah, the Steelers wide receivers for this week, and let me know rest of season. If your answer is different, Jules, rank them.
I'll go, man, rest of season, eh? You're so close, man. I'm going Juju, Deontay, Claypool.
Juju, Deontay, Claypool. Cool. So Deontay Johnson, he's the guy with the most top 12 weeks, and he has 3 of them. That's as many as Juju and Claypool combined. Double-digit targets in 5 different games. More yards after the catch than even Juju Smith-Schuster this year for Deontay. And like in the 5, I think he's played 5 or 6 games completely healthy. He kind of has the most targets by far. Like him and Juju really separate from the bunch when both of them have played. But yeah, Claypool, I think, is the upside guy, right, Brian? Like, are you playing him if you need to chase points after the Thursday Night Football matchup, or what?
Brian, you're muted.
Bry guy, you're muted yourself. You muted. You sold
Sorry,
your own
man,
poison. Sold your own poison, bro.
Too many beers, eh?
No, I had it on mute so you couldn't hear the typing of the keyboard. I don't even know who has the most upside there. You know,
Is it Deontay? Yeah.
I think it's Deontay. You know, I mean Claypool. Yeah, he can blow up. He has those big playabilities, but I think Deontay, he also has big playability, and he gets more targets generally. I know Claypool has had double-digit games, but I think Deontay is the safer bet for a higher ceiling.
Yeah, man. I think it's touchdowns, right? Like Claypool is more touchdown dependent than Deontay Johnson kind of is. And yeah, and just for the record, like if you look at the percent of team touchdowns for all wide receivers, Claypool is 3rd on that list. Tyreek Hill and Jameson Crowder above him. Not that Jameson Crowder's 30% of his team's touchdowns are worth anything, but I just think it's interesting that he does have, and he leads the team in air yards too. Like he's being used very interestingly. And over the last 2 weeks, the only person who has more targets than Chase Claypool, you guys would never guess. He's a running back.
Alvin Kamara.
Not even close.
Oh.
JD McKissick.
Boom, 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 boom. Awesome. So
14.
Yeah, that is just too funny. So we barely mentioned Juju. Is Juju just a boring wide receiver too then at this point?
Yes.
I think so. I think he is, you know.
Are all 3 of these guys wide receiver 2s then?
Yep.
I think that's where you got to categorize them. But I think all 3 of them have wide receiver 1 upside. It's not going to come for all 3 of them in any given week. But I think there is going to be one guy who can finish as a top 12 wide receiver on any given week. It's just going to be tough to determine who it is, but I think between like Juju and Deontay, I think those are the 2 guys. You got to start them every single week. And then for me, Chase is, he's a flex option wide receiver 3, and I want to throw him in my lineup. But if I've got if I've got better options, I'm putting them out there instead.
So let me throw my tinfoil hat on then, and we'll move away from them. Let's talk about Eric Ebron, guys. He's the tight end 15, not even 10 points per game. No game with 55 receiving yards as a Steeler yet. This guy sucks. He's quietly the tight end 5 overall in the last 4 weeks, though. And he's just super in play because of the strength of schedule. Like Jacksonville this week allows the 5th most points to tight ends. Baltimore allows the 14th fewest next week. Weeks 13 to 15, he gets Washington, Buffalo, Cincinnati. That is the 8th best matchup, the 3rd best matchup, and the 2nd best matchup for tight ends. And then we'll drop him for fantasy football championship week because in his revenge game against the Colts, he will score a 0 in that game. But do you guys think, like, is he a top 10 tight end for the next 4 or 5 weeks here with Eric Ebron? And does that concern you at all because of how good the Steelers have been at game planning this year? like concern you with the wide receivers?
I think it concerns me for Connor a lot. Eric Ebron's historically been a red zone monster. When he was with the Colts, he had that season where he had 12 targets and 12 red zone targets and 12 touchdowns, which is crazy. But, I do think that it hurts Connor more, right? Like he becomes more of an outlet guy. There's no pass work to go to the running back when the tight end's getting all those checkdowns, and then and then can take some red zone work. So I do think he is top 10 moving forward. Even probably for the rest of the season because of that strength of schedule and Ben's ability to get him the ball.
So just one more note, and then I'll throw it to you guys for the Jaguars because I'm just gonna go grab a drink here if you don't mind. What I'm looking at it. So rookie scoring for fantasy this year. The only players who have scored more fantasy points as rookies: Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Chase Claypool is fourth, and third is James Robinson. So what do you guys think of James Robinson? And I will be right back.
Okay, guys. Yeah, James Robinson's been my dude. Like that guy, if you were to sit down and look at his metrics and just not factor his 40-yard dash time in, the guy's insanely explosive. There's been reports coming out of it in camp the whole entire time that he was his vision was next level. There was other running backs on the roster saying they can't do what this kid can do. And you've seen it. 2 touchdowns called back last week. 2. Do you know what the fantasy community would have done if he had 2 touchdowns on top of what he did? Like everybody be going nuts. I mean, I love the guy. I don't think this week's going to be his best week. I think they're just going to tee off and just they're going to do everything they can just to stop the guy. I think the floor will be there. I think that you can expect your 10 points from him. I don't feel great about anything else. Maybe he gets a touchdown, but the future's bright for that boy.
Yeah, especially with Chris Thompson going on IR, there's no competition for him on third downs for receiving work. He's a guy that I wrote off initially, and I picked him up and then traded him away, and I wish I just kept him.
Yeah, I traded for him in a dynasty.
There you go.
Yeah,
he should be set at least for next year.
I agree, man. I mean, and like you said there, like the guy's he's a great football player, man. He's powerful, explosive. Like he hits the hole hard. He doesn't stop for anybody. He's, he knows where he wants to go, and he's got a nose for the end zone too, right? You talk about the 2 touchdowns called back. When he gets down in there, like he finds the end zone. And, he's a fun player to watch, and one of the guys you just want to root for, right? You don't see too many undrafted free agents that are able to come in and, and almost lead the NFL in rushing. Like that's just crazy. So, I love James Robinson. I'm happy for him, and I think he's a back end wide or running back 1 this week in a tough matchup, but probably going to get 80 yards, a few receptions, and if he scores, he's got a good fantasy day. So I think he's the only option you can really trust on this Jaguars offense.
Yeah, for sure.
What about you, Brian? Are you jumping in on any of these wide receivers?
The wide receivers for the Jags? No, I'm not playing anybody. No, James Robinson is the only Jag I'll play this week.
No, that settles it. I'll throw DJ Chark out there as a wide receiver 3, but I think there's a chance he just gets shut down. Right? You talked about it earlier. That's who they got to stop: James Robinson and DJ Chark. And then if you get beat by Keelan Cole and Chris Conley, then you got to figure it out.
Yeah,
Tyler Eifert or whoever their tight end is right now.
Yeah, Tyler Eifert. Like I don't know.
O'Shaughnessy.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to say I thought it was hilarious that it's not hilarious, but Chris Thompson went to the IR, and I'm not even surprised. I didn't even know that, and you said that, and I'm just like, oh yeah, okay.
He lasted a lot longer than I thought he was going to.
It's true. I feel for players like that, like you get into the NFL, you get your opportunity, and he's a good player, but you just can't stay on the field. Like, how are you ever gonna, be able to succeed?
I mean, it's not a conducive position for small guys to take that sort of punishment. Like, Like, I don't know. Look, like, I'm a lot bigger than that dude, and I can't imagine getting blown up by JJ Watt. How you do that, like, for years and years and years, like no thanks. I don't want to play that position at his size.
No, 100%, man. 100%. It's tough, right? Like, you're gonna start seeing running backs sliding and like trying not to get hit.
Well, look at Kamara. Look at Kamara. Like, does that guy ever get hit hard?
No, man, he
I don't
just
know
runs out of
how he
bounds.
does it.
He just runs out of bounds, or he just
Hey,
like falls. He just
yeah, he
falls to
goes
the ground
down.
sometimes. Yeah,
He literally
Yeah.
goes down. Like, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable. People like 18-yard rush, and he's not fighting for the extra 2. He just goes down. And I think
Yeah.
like it's smart.
yeah. Well, he's got to protect his body, right? So
Hey, on
not
the-
everybody can be Marion Barber.
On the
Chris Carson.
Jags front, how long do you think Jake Luton remains the starter?
Until Lawrence gets there.
Yeah.
yeah. Like, I don't know, man.
Adam Gase might have something to say about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say it might be Fields.
It might be. Yeah, that would be
I think
interesting.
that was the move.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think Minshew comes back. He's healthy enough. I believe he's going to be the backup, but I don't think they go back to him as the starter.
I mean, at this
Did
point,
he get cleared?
He's clear. Yeah, he was practicing. He's questionable right now.
Oh,
Nice.
okay.
I mean, at this point in the year, if you're the Jags management, you got to see what you got in this offense and what you got on this team. You know what you got in Minshew, and if Luton's not the answer, then you got to go get a quarterback in this next draft. So you got to roll him out there, see what's coming, and roll with the punches there. I mean, if they lose, they're probably happy with it. If they win, they're happier. Right.
Yeah.
All right, guys, you want to get into this last one? Ty, you want to take us
Yeah.
away? We're just getting into
Where are we going?
the Dolphins and the Broncos.
Yeah, let's do it. So
quick update, guys. It just popped up there. It said Bridgewater's going to be a game time decision. They're going to test his knee out in pregame.
oh,
Nice.
God.
I feel like if Bridgewater plays, I don't want to play him. But if PJ Walker's the starter, I'll roll him out there in a 2 QB league. I think I'll go for it, man. I think he's got a decent upside with his ability with his legs, and there's weapons on that offense. It's a bad defense. If you need a streamer and Joe Brady, I think you could throw him out there.
This is one thing I didn't talk about on Teddy B. If he plays, they're gonna scheme to get the ball out of his hands quickly.
DJ Moore.
Yeah, hopefully.
Samuel,
as a
who knows?
fantasy owner, I don't want Teddy to play. I just think there's too much re-injury risk, and if he goes down in game, that screws up your whole lineup. It's best case scenario is he's ruled out pregame, and you can adjust accordingly.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I think it just might serve to overvalue some of the wide receivers on the DFS aspect of things, like DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. So what game? We're going what game? Sorry, guys. I'm really sorry.
Dolphins, Broncos.
Dolphins, Broncos. Okay,
Mhm.
so that game has another really low point total in Denver. To a time, I mean, Miami is quietly top 10 in points scored at about 20 points per game, 28 points per game. But Denver is bottom 10 in points allowed, giving up about 28 points per game. So there's a way that Miami could end up rolling in this game. Do you guys think that happens? What do you think, Jules?
Well, it's interesting when you look at it because almost half of those point totals over the last 3 weeks have come from the defense. So,
Or
we
special
look
teams,
at we look at this and we say, oh, this offense is scoring a lot, but in reality, they haven't needed to. It's not that they can't; it's just that they haven't really needed to go out and force the ball downfield. And we saw Salvin Ahmed come to life last week, and we saw this with Gaskin too. Like when they find a running back they just feed this guy, and then they run a lot of play action. Yeah, there you go. But then it sets up the play action, and that's you see Mike Gesicki getting the ball downfield on those play action rollouts and whatnot. And it just I'm a big fan of Tua as a football player, but I'm a little worried about him for fantasy because I don't think that they're gonna actually need to throw the ball a whole lot in this game.
Well, there's no doubt they've changed the offense, and that's why we think man, it's a 46 point total, so it's really low. But and it's because of the pace, man. These are going to be two really slow teams this game. Like Miami should be able to
100%.
dictate the pace, but it's just not great for fantasy since they are one of the slower teams. Like in the last 4 games, the Dolphins are tied with the Browns as the slowest team in football, just 57 plays per game. They're also running the ball 49% of the time in the last 4 games. So that's really crazy. And that's why I think like Miami is the play. Like Denver is plus 3.5 at home. I think Miami is in a pretty smashed spot. Broncos are 1-3 at home. Dolphins are 3-1 on the road this year, baby. And 7-2 against the spread for the Dolphins this year.
Oh
Yeah, I think they destroy that 3.5 point spread.
I'll have
So-
Dolphins on every teaser that I make.
Yeah, I know it's weird. Like
Yeah.
it's one of those things. Like, am I missing something? And what I might be missing here is like, is Drew Lock going to play? Like, he's going to probably play, Jeff.
Yeah, they've already said that he will start.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, man. Miami's defense has been very underrated.
Stout.
They've been, yeah.
Yeah, we could
So-
talk the rest of the night about the Patriots' connections, the way the defense is scheming. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
So
fun to watch.
the re-injury risk with Drew Lock is fairly high. So personally, I'm fading Judy, Tim Patrick. I'm fading Noah Fant, but it's kind of hard. I don't know if I'm fading him outside of being a tight end 1, just because, like we talked about earlier, tight end is so thin right now.
What's his injury status too? Like, wasn't he dealing with ribs or something? No,
I think it was
Yeah.
an ankle.
So no,
Oh yeah.
it was an ankle injury before, but yeah, listed as ribs this week.
Yeah.
He's
Well, he ends
questionable,
up being
but
like a. Yeah, sorry. He
He's
just ends
expected
up
to
being
play.
like a ball carrier. You know what I mean? Like he ends up being a ball carrier a lot of the ways he's used because of his ability after the catch. So you worry about that. And I think Jerry Jeudy was dealing with an ankle. If that's what you're thinking of.
Oh
Jules,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah. I got Judy and Fant back to back in a Superflex tight end premium lineup, and I was looking at it pre-show, and I'm like, man, I can't roll both these guys out there. I don't even know if I can roll one of these guys out there. Yeah, man, that feels gross. So I don't feel great about Noah Fant this week, and I love Noah Fant, but with the ankle injury, Drew Lock injury, a good defense, that's a bunch of red flags for me.
Yeah, so the Broncos are really, really tough to trust. But does anybody want to trust Tua this week? Like, Tua's been kind of all over the place in his starts. I could say that he does have multiple touchdown passes in back-to-back games now to go along with 13 rush attempts, too. Lots of RPOs in this offense. But is anybody starting Tua over like a Cousins going against Dallas, or where do we stand there?
Oof. Probably not. That'd be close, but I think I'd still play Cousins.
if I wanted a safe play, I'd probably play Tua. But if I wanted upside, I'd probably pivot from Tua.
That's a really good call.
I'm all in on, like, outside of being a Vikings fan, guys. I just think having two really good outside wide receivers. We're seeing Irv start to get play in Minnesota. You got Dalvin Cook, who's going to keep defenses honest. Like, I'm going Cousins this week. Like, Dallas is just, and man, Jalen Smith has not been playing good. I don't know, man. I'm going
That whole
Cousins a little
defense.
bit bullish on him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That whole defense just filled with busts right now. It's hilarious. And their only good draft pick, I think, just went out. Travion Diggs there. I think he just went down with injury as well in the IR.
Mhm.
So, when we get into this running back room for Miami, obviously we have no Myles Gaskin. He's out again. Jordan Howard, bye-bye. So, hello, Salvin Ahmed. The Dolphins love their Husky running backs. Just so funny. Denver they're not like a prime spot or anything for running backs, but they do allow over 100 yards rushing to running backs. Do you have any news on Matt Breida's health? Like, is this going to be an Icarus type performance if he does play? Because he hasn't practiced all week, has he?
He has, yeah. So that's the one thing I've been looking at for Miami is how does Matt Breida's he is expected to play. He practiced full all week. So I'm looking to see how he affects Ahmed's role.
So how are you thinking of Ahmed? Like, do you think of him as like a top 24 running back this week or no?
Based on how he's played, honestly, I think he is. I think he is a top 24. There's just the risk that, Flores loved Matt Breida. He really wanted to bring him in. They traded for him from the Niners.
I love him.
So yeah, and he's good. He was really good in college. So that's
and it's not like he doesn't play through injuries too. Like he's been known to play through injuries before. So yeah. But I think the
Yeah.
only concern I have with Salvin Ahmed is the target. Like he has just one target in those 2 games here. Like who would you start between Ahmed and Philip Lindsay or Melvin Gordon on the other side? Like if you had to pick one of those 3 guys.
Don't make me do it.
You can't ask me
please,
about
no.
Lindsay.
That is such a dirty question. That makes me feel filthy just listening to it.
Well, guns to your head.
Give me Ahmed.
Yeah, me too. So you don't even have to make
Give me-
that decision between those 2 on Denver.
the fact that Denver doesn't know how to use Philip Lindsay.
It's so freaking frustrating.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What do you guys think of, speaking of being known how to use, what about the ex-Adam Gase guy, Kalen Balazs, in a revenge game against the Jets or Salvin Ahmed?
Oh,
That's
Oh, have we got to that point? Is that what 2020's made of us?
Exactly. And this
Yeah,
is
that
kind of
is what
and this is
2020
what I'm
is.
trying to express. Yeah.
man. I can't believe
Like,
Kalen
oh,
Balazs is a
no.
viable fantasy option.
receiving upside. I'm actually gonna pick Balazs
Mhm.
if it's PPR.
I'd rather start a second kicker if I had the option.
That's like a super flex.
Oh,
Yeah.
we did that in one of our leagues. No, we
Kicker
did that
premium.
in one of our leagues.
Kicker
At the beginning
premiums.
of the year. At the beginning of the year, we didn't know what was going to happen with this COVID stuff. So, in one of our super flex leagues, we're actually allowed to start a second kicker. So, nobody's used it yet, but like, I mean, if those are my options, like, yeah, I'm grabbing a kicker.
Like you're throwing Joey Sly, Harrison Butker out there, easy money.
Exactly.
Jason
100%.
Sanders.
Jason Sanders, yeah. Will Lutz. I don't think they'll score a lot. You know, they might get into the 20. I think that's actually really interesting if you do play in leagues with kickers. Like, look at the teams that aren't scoring in the red zone, and their kickers are often, you know, the guys that you're able to target.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I
Chase
love kickers.
high point totals.
I've been doing
Totally.
this one for years and years and years. This has been my hack. Get the kicker off of the rookie quarterback's team. Look at
Yep.
what Bullock's doing.
Yep.
Look at what Sanders is doing. Like the kids just don't have finish nowadays, so you got to grab them kickers.
Absolutely.
That's a good move.
It's a good one.
Okay, guys, get me the fuck off of kickers here. Let's go to the wide receiver position in Miami. Because I might start a kicker over Devontae Parker for half this season. I mean, he's the wide receiver 36. He scored the lone touchdown for Tua in his debut. That was his only catch in that game. And in 3 starts for Tua, Parker has 9 catches for under 100 yards combined. But the thing that I keep coming back to is it kind of is all Parker in this receiving room now. We saw the splits with him once Preston Williams went down last year. So Bry Guy, is Devontae Parker like a top 24 wide receiver for you this week going against Denver? And is he going forward?
Against Denver, he should have enough volume to sort of put him right in that range, but I don't know. He's sort of more of a wide receiver 3 for me, and Tua's just been sort of spreading it around. And going forward, outside of the Denver game, I think he's sort of back end wide receiver 2, probably wide receiver 3. I just don't see enough volume to be there for him and touchdown upside to have him as a solid wide receiver 2 going forward.
Yeah, I just think a lot of people might sell him as a buy. If that, I don't know if that came out right. Like we're in week 11. From week 11 on last year, Parker was a top 10 wide receiver in PPR. He lit up some elite cornerbacks too in that stretch, but totally different offense with Fitzmagic throwing to him a copious amount of contested catches for him last year. And yeah, I think a lot of this that we're talking about is just the defense is legit for Miami. The Dolphins are playing it on the safe side, which hurts Devontae Parker. And we've seen that with his air yards and all that kind of stuff. So, another guy that's kind of been hurt, surprisingly, is Mike Gesicki. What are you guys doing with Mike? Like, is anybody risking the biscuit this week with Mike Gesicki?
Probably not, man. I mean, it's a tough one. This is a tough week to roll Mike Gesicki out. In Dynasty, obviously, I'm holding him. My athletic freak, super profile, but as far as a week-to-week basis goes, it's tough to roll Mike Gesicki out there in one tight end leagues. I'd rather pick up Jimmy Graham. And, I mean, not this week, obviously, but because he's on bye. But but like I'd rather pick up Eric Ebron off of waivers, he's there in like half the leagues, right? Than play Mike Gesicki. So, I don't feel great about it.
You mentioned this week the Broncos have allowed just 2 touchdowns to tight ends all season. Both of them came in week 1. 19% of Mike Gesicki's receiving yards came on one play in week 5 this year. So it's just crazy. Like week 5, he had 91 yards receiving. He has 90 yards since in the last 4 games combined. Hasn't scored since week 3. So Mike Gesicki might be the guy that I got the most incorrect this year in fantasy. I kind of thought this would be the year because of how many of his snaps were being played in the slot, et cetera, and so forth. But that has really taken a hit under Tua Tagovailoa. So what do you guys think? Drew Lock's not going to play. Melvin Gordon or Phillip Lindsay are either top 24 running backs in PPR going forward for Broncos.
Is Drew Lock not playing?
No.
Sorry, I said Drew.
playing.
I meant. Sorry, meant Drew Lock is playing. We're not playing him. That's what I meant to say.
There
I
we
just rolled
go.
it all into one sentence.
Hey, but I do have one league where I am tanking, and Drew Lock is my starting quarterback.
Wow, kicked out of the league.
He's my only quarterback. He's my only quarterback.
Hey,
oh man. Anyways,
I gotta bounce. I gotta catch my flight here. I just want to thank you all for your guys' time. It's been a blast, but I gotta get on a bird and get to work. So thanks again, guys.
Enjoy it, man. Enjoy it. Thanks for joining us.
At Dinostradamus, and a terrific follow when it comes to being in the know at every level of fantasy, whether it's DFS, whether it's Devi, that guy's in on it all. So really appreciative of him coming on. The pleasure is always on the end of True North Fantasy Football. So thanks a lot to Tyler Dinostradamus. Definitely, we like him better than either running back in Denver. So nobody wanted to answer my question, which means they're not top 24 guys, right?
Only if. So Melvin Gordon's trial is December 14th. That's the one thing I'm looking at is first time DUI is a minimum of 3-game suspension. So if they give it to him this year,
that's right.
Phillip Lindsay could be I've been saying a league winner. I don't know if he's actually going to be a league winner. But
and he's so good though. I love Phillip Lindsay. Like that guy's a great football player. It's so frustrating to watch him not feed Phillip Lindsay. Just give him one game with 20 touches, and he's gonna break one.
Well, he did. He got 120 yards.
Yeah. But when they're both on the field, they just don't play him. It's fucked. He hasn't played above 45% of the snaps in any of the games both he and Melvin Gordon have played. Even though, like you're alluding to, Jeff, with the efficiency, it's just off the charts. 5.5 yards per carry this year. We see it with his breakaway percentage, things like that every year. The guy's just a speed demon. Imagine what he would do in that outside zone scheme under Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. It's just gut-wrenching. So I have a really tough question. What do you guys think? Would you start one of these running backs in a flex spot, or would you go with a Curtis Samuel?
Samuel
for me, yeah.
Cool. So let's move off them. The Dolphins, the Broncos' opponent this week, they allow over 180 receiving yards to the wide receiver position. Their secondary is definitely trending in a good direction, though. I don't love wide receivers facing Miami, but the bigger issue, I think, is 3 talented wide receivers that we have here all bring something to the table as well, but we have Drew Lock as the quarterback, who we have a hard time trusting to support any weapons, let alone 3 wide receivers and Noah Fant. So is Jerry Jeudy, I know you said, Jeff, that you're even a little squeamish on him this week. I am as well. Do you think he's locked into wide receiver 3 territory at this point? Or what do you think, Brian? Do you think he's kind of falling out of that?
Jerry Jeudy?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's sort of right on that wide receiver 3 territory with the volume that he's getting, but I just can't trust Drew Lock. So in the spots that I do have him, I'm sometimes looking at the guys that are even lower in consensus rankings that might have better matchups. And it's sometimes a tough pick between the two of them.
Yeah, but a guy who you can break ties away from is kind of what you're saying. I like that. But, 32 targets over the past 3 weeks. He has 19 catches of 15 plus yards. So Jerry Jeudy has the talent and I think we can all agree that the situation just isn't spectacular. Does anybody want to pick between KJ Hamler and Tim Patrick for fantasy?
Oof. If I had to pick one, I'm taking Tim Patrick, and he's had double-digit points in I think 4 straight games in PPR. He's been a consistent as they come flex. I always like to look at this and think, do I want to get somebody who's got a really high ceiling in my flex spot, or do I want a consistent floor play? And if I can get a receiver in a running back that have really high ceilings, I'll throw somebody like Tim Patrick in deeper flex leagues in the flex just because I know I'm going to get a consistent game. But that being said, I'm not sure this is the game for it. I don't feel real great about any of the pass catchers in this one. Drew Lock with the rib injury, none of it feels good. I'm sitting here debating between Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant. I can only play one of these guys. I don't want to play the third option in my eyes on this offense.
Yeah, I would. I'm going to take some heat on this. This is fine, but I would rather play Jakeem Grant over Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, or Hamler.
Is he not heating up, eh? Like, they traded Isaiah Ford, that slot wide receiver, who, by the way, has not played. I don't think he has a touch for the Patriots yet. But, yeah, like, he's really come on. So I don't think Jakeem Grant's a crazy call because the team has shown confidence in him as a long-term prospect. Like, they signed him, I believe, last year in the offseason.
Definitely. Yeah. Dynasty guy you can go get on waivers for sure.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Do you guys know Tim Patrick has 11.7 points per game in PPR right now, and that leads the team in fantasy more than Jerry
what I'm
Jeudy,
saying.
KJ Hamler, more than Devontae Parker, by the way, on the other end of this game. Also, 15 targets over the past 2 games. I think KJ Hamler, honestly, though, is just maybe the biggest victim of his circumstances in the NFL right now. I mean, he hasn't had a blow-up game yet, but he is playing in the slot way more in recent weeks, 10 targets in back-to-back games, and I'll always think they should be giving this guy like a carry or 2 every game. But I do think he's coming into his own, and I own him in start 3 wide receiver multi-flex leagues. I actually will maybe take a look at KJ Hamler. He's the only guy I could see being able to do anything against this defense. Like, they're not going to be able to air it out or anything. So I've talked a lot about Noah Fant tonight, guys. I mean, 10.7 points per game PPR is good for tight end 8. Like, that's not bad, but 6 straight games under 50 yards receiving, no touchdown in any of those 6 games. Am I missing something here? Like, there's too many weapons for the quarterbacks to support. He's cold as fuck, but Noah Fant is still valued super high. So, and Miami is not a good matchup for tight ends. They allow under 40 yards receiving, just 4 touchdowns to the position. Am I missing something?
It doesn't feel good starting Noah Fant as your tight end this week. It really doesn't. My main dynasty, I lost George Kittle and got to roll with Noah Fant. And, this is just one of the matchups that I'm not feeling too hot about. Like the big thing is the quarterback situation and, what's going on with there just can't be multiple fantasy options, like viable receiving options in this offense with the way that they play right now. I just don't see it as a possibility. Now you get a more explosive playmaker behind center and somebody who can, kind of push the ball downfield. And, I think that they got all the pieces that they need to have an elite receiving core. They just need a quarterback.
They need Kyle Trask.
Exactly.
Boom, 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 boom.
Can we get the buzzer, the Bud Light buzzer?
That's where we need at Destination Debbie to fly across the screen.
Yeah. Guys, I'll be right back.
So let's just.
Well, major bummer on Fant too is I can't even remember what week now it was. I'd have to look at my notes, but he initially got the ankle injury. He was out 2 games, I believe. He came back. He re-injured the ankle injury, and now it's ankle and ribs. So it's like, man, I just want to see him stay healthy. I think his upside could be tremendous. But yeah, there's a lot of factors working against him.
Can I pick your brain really quick? Like, I was wondering, what is like is it much more likely that somebody has a compensatory injury or re-injury rates? Are they higher for ankle and foot injuries than any other injury? Is that right?
than any other.
Like, I know like a hip pointer might be a higher rate of re-injury or something, but like, generally, like, is it, you
It's
kind
one
of
of
want to
the-
be squeamish, right? With skill
Yeah,
players
yeah.
and foot injuries and ankle, right?
Yeah, like you think about what the Niners have done with Raheem Mostert. They gave him 5, 6 weeks to let it heal, especially with a high ankle because it's higher up. You have a syndesmotic sprain. It's just more complex. So the re-injury risk is just higher with any ankle injury. You look at DJ Chark. He's had 5, 6 ankle injuries since LSU 2017. So it's just one of those things that are very recurrent.
Totally. Yeah.
Even last
And-
year with Saquon, when he came back initially, he was like really slow to get going right up until he was fully over it into the playoffs. And as long as you were able to make it into the playoffs, you were able to reap the benefits. But he was really slow out of the gate when he came back, and he came back faster than he should have.
Yeah, he missed 2 games, and it took him 5 games, I believe, to hit over 80 yards, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
It's like that's one of those where it's like, man, just give him the. I was kind of thinking the same with Kenyon Drake, but I mean, he looked great against Seattle somehow.
Mm-hmm. And that's why it's funny, because you see somebody like Chris Carson who's battled through some of those injuries in the past, and it's crazy. It is. That's why I think injuries are
Joe
so
Mixon.
hard. Yeah, and it almost comes down to each individual player amongst a bunch of guys who are literally some of the most athletic human beings on the planet, who sometimes carry the benefit of recovering faster from injuries and stuff as well. So it's just so interesting. We definitely have to have Jeff on in the offseason, like do one of these big breakdowns where we talk a lot of this kind of stuff. But for now, let's talk about a different kind of risk, guys. Let's go to the Philadelphia Eagles at the Cleveland Browns. Lots of risk in this game for everybody. I cannot believe the spread is just insane. So Washington are favored in this game, and the Browns are favored in this game at home. And it opened with them being even bigger favorites. So the money's coming in on Philadelphia, which actually kind of surprised me. But this is another really low total, and it's in Cleveland. Does anybody know if there's any like weather concerns or anything in this game? Because Cleveland's had some of those in recent weeks.
This is actually the only game this weekend that we have even like a little bit of a weather concern. The wind's not much of a concern. It's still under 10 miles an hour, but it is going to be wet. So it is going to be rainy. So however much you want to knock down the passing game for a wet ball, they might decide they want to run it more. And I could see Cleveland definitely doing that with the running backs that they got. They might want to try and slow it down and run that ball.
Yeah,
it's good for 2 drops.
So mean. Yeah, the Browns are obviously one of the run heaviest teams in football. Both teams actually rank bottom 6 in passing yards per game, so there should be a lot of running in this. Both strong run game. Like Browns run D is top 10. Eagles are bottom 10, so the Browns should have more success, and they are home favorites. They have the much stronger backfield, so it kind of like does make sense that they're favored. But I just think it's interesting. I mean, the Browns, they allow the 8th fewest rushing yards per game. Philadelphia gives up the 7th most rushing yards per game. So does that mean we're gonna sit Baker Mayfield? Like, we're never starting Baker Mayfield, I guess, eh?
No, not unless you're in a super flex with another guy on a bye.
Mm-hmm, yeah. I think it's interesting. I mean, the Cleveland Browns, their offensive line has gotten so healthy. They are so potent. Eagles quietly also have one of the best pass rushes, so I think that's going to be an interesting one for Baker Mayfield. Staying on his feet should go a long way to Cleveland winning this one. So what do you guys think about the running backs? Are these both top 12 running backs?
Certainly have the upside.
Yeah, they have the upside to do it. I just don't know if they definitely will have the volume to do it, especially if it slows down and they don't get the touchdowns. It could be a running back 2 and a running back 1, and I don't know which one it's going to be.
Yeah, and you look at this week with like I think I'll put it this way, like in their 4 full games together this year, Nick Chubb is averaging almost 20 points per game, while Kareem Hunt is about 16.5 points per game in fantasy. That would make Chubb the running back 5, Kareem Hunt the running back 12. But I agree, the play volume is like a huge concern in this offense. And then you look at this matchup, like this isn't one that's super conducive to both guys blowing up, but they get Jacksonville, Tennessee, New York Giants, and the New York Jets in 4 of the next 5 weeks. The New York teams in fantasy football championship weeks. So what do you think, Jeff? Which running back do you want more in fantasy? Who's winning folks in leagues? Or could it be both?
I mean, well, if you're talking value play, I would say Kareem Hunt, because right now you could probably get him cheap since Nick Chubb came back. Ultimately, though, I want Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is the leader of this backfield. Last week, he finally came back, but Kareem Hunt outsnapped Chubb 58% to 43%. I expect that to switch back to Chubb. So, but Hunt is one of those guys where if I need a running back and I can get him cheap, I'm targeting Kareem Hunt.
I just sent my 2021 first for Kareem Hunt in a 14-team Superflex.
I did that in 2 leagues this week.
Yeah, I got some inspiration from you, Brian. So I had to send Smokey the.
Well, and imagine if Chubb sits out next year. I mean, he's a team guy, so he likely won't sit out for his contract extension. But man, Kareem Hunt he has so much upside if anything happens to Chubb.
Well, even with him, right? Like when we look at this offense, you lose OBJ and you're looking at Jarvis as your number 1 wide receiver. And then it's, realistically going to be a plethora of tight ends, that you're looking at, and the occasional, Higgins target. And
Harrison Bryant.
Yeah, your Harrison Bryant's and, annoyingly Njoku is going to get thrown in there. And it's not great. So like the 2 fantasy options that I want on this team are Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, and it pretty much ends there.
So no Jarvis Landry, eh? Like the guy, I get it. He's the wide receiver 45, averaging 5 points in PPR, less per game this year than he did last year. But this has to be the game Landry scores. And given that he is the only show in town besides Higgins and the tight ends, as you guys alluded to, like do you guys think Landry is no longer top 36? He's not even in the setting lineups conversation?
Man, I hope he is. I do, for Jarvis's sake. He's a player that's, perennially undervalued, has been, consistently healthy his whole career. I don't think he's ever missed a game. This is a guy I want to succeed. I want to cheer for him, but this offense isn't conducive with that. They don't pass the ball enough. He doesn't get in the red zone. Even if Jarvis does get in the red zone, like how are you supposed to bank on that when it hasn't happened at all this year, right? And if he doesn't get in the red zone, then what do you got?
I think Kenny Golladay was the only player in 2019 who had more targets inside the 10-yard line than Jarvis Landry. He has 0 such targets this year. Still no touchdown on the season. He's got the most catches in football without a touchdown, most receiving yards among all scoreless losers all year. And only, like, if you look at this matchup, this ain't the week. Only Washington, the Bears, the Ravens, and the Rams have allowed fewer touchdowns to wide receivers this year than the Eagles. And he's playing half his snaps from the outside, so he's going to be on a sleigh ride at some points of this game.
Yeah.
So Rashad Higgins, like, I know everyone hates him all of a sudden, but he had over 100 yards receiving a couple weeks ago. He's been battling the conditions severely with the wind in the last couple weeks. Any interest in Rashad Higgins?
Kind of like Hodge better, to be honest. I mean, I don't like any of them as a play, but
yeah.
That's exactly
I like him
it.
with the Rams, that's for sure. I haven't really noticed him much this year, so that's interesting. That is he getting some snaps in the slot?
Yeah, he was on IR for 3 weeks, and then he got, I think, around 60% snaps, hit 58%. He actually, Higgins and Hodge both had 58% snaps.
Wow, so he's literally splitting snaps with him. So maybe I'm way off base here, because I did like Kadarius Hodge as a prospect. I was really interested in him in that Sean McVay offense. Like, you always wanted to know who that third wide receiver was going to be. So
He only got one
maybe we
target,
should
though.
talk about who, Kadarius?
Hodge, yeah.
So let's talk about these tight ends then, because we clearly we have no answers with these wide receivers. Like, I'll say the Eagles have been brutal this season against the tight ends. They allow the 6th most fantasy points, 6th most receiving yards per game, and they've allowed 6 touchdowns to the position. 6. So that's the 4th worst on a per game basis. That's the part of, like that's part of the reason that they've been so bad against the wide receivers. Sorry, I was just reading a text there. Almost 30% of Baker's passes this year, though, guys, almost 30% have gone to the tight end position. Tight ends have scored 6 of the 15 touchdown passes for Cleveland. So is Austin Hooper a top 12 tight end going forward, or is there too much? Is it being spread around between 3 tight ends too much?
I don't like Hooper at all, personally. I think he was paid a ton of money, but
Highest paid tight end in football.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Maybe I'm biased, but honestly, Harrison Bryant looks better than Austin Hooper out there.
Mm-hmm. I mentioned it because I say 6 of 15 touchdowns for Cleveland this year have gone to the tight ends. Only one of those has gone to Austin Hooper. It's really trippy since he made all his money with Matt Ryan inside the 10-yard line. But I think if we don't think he's going to get the touchdowns, if we think they continue to go to Harrison Bryant in the 10 zone, which he's done a spectacular job accommodating that volume for Harrison Bryant. But 7 games this year, no games with 60 yards receiving for Austin Hooper. I should say he was heating up a bit before he got injured, but last week he came back and had quite the dud, catching just 1 ball against Houston, 2 targets last week. So Harrison Bryant, is he going to get to the point where he passes Austin Hooper by chance on this depth chart, or is Austin Hooper going to be out there to block too much?
I mean, how do you make the guy the highest paid tight end in football and then not put him on the field?
Well, I think both will be on the field. It's more like 2 tight end sets are so prevalent in Cleveland in this new system. Yeah, so I wonder if we think Harrison Bryant might get more of the receiving work while Hooper's left in to block more often.
Certainly
I don't
possible.
think so.
No. Money talks.
I mean, Hooper's a talented player when he gets the ball in his hands. He hasn't got a whole lot of volume, and like you said, one of those touchdowns out of the 6 to the tight ends going to Hooper. It's just it doesn't look great. If I'm throwing him out there, like I'm not expecting anything more than like the tight end 15. If I get it, I'm happy, but it's not a start I want to make this week.
Totally. So I think we should try. Yeah, but that's why it is a tight end. So I think we should get Hooper or get Harrison Bryant, because one of them I just think could get more involved. We just see so much of the work in Cleveland, especially the high leverage work going to the tight ends, and we see so little production from the wide receivers. Where we are seeing just a plethora of production from the wide receiver position is in Cincinnati. And that's where I want to go. Actually, not there, but to Washington, their opponents. So Cincinnati Bengals at the Washingtons. Washington is favored in this game, barely at home. The Washingtons should be favored because Mixon is out. And the Bengals will throw the ball as they always do, if not be inclined to throw more. But Washington allows the fewest passing yards in all of football. So I really think I want to say this is a big test for Zach Taylor so far as like game planning, how I think of him going forward. But this game has just a 47-point total. So should we have a little bit of apprehension towards the Cincinnati Bengals this week?
And I think it hits the over on that. I think Vegas thinks it's a low scoring game, and I think that's certainly possible. But you alluded to it. This is a game that Zach Taylor has to make a statement and say, we're gonna use the offensive weapons we have and go out and be able to score against this defense that's been able to stop the pass recently, and that's what we're gonna do. I'm not a big Gio fan in this one. I love what Washington's been able to do to stop the run, but I think Higgins and Boyd, man, those are like that's a tough 1-2 punch to stop.
Totally. And go for it.
Sorry. No, I was just going to ask you, Ty, where are you at?
Well, I mean, I think I kind of agree with you. Like, you can't not play these Bengals because of how hot they are, right? Like, there's just so much. They're so hot right now. So I think you're going to roll these guys out. I just think you have to temper expectations. I mean, the Bengals and Washington combined are scoring just 43 points this season on offense. And I think the injuries come into play because Like the Bengals offensive line, which is just terrible to begin with, but it gets, its only decent player back this week in Jonah Williams and some other linemen, but nobody who is the heart of the unit by any means. But Joe Mixon being out, I did want to ask you, Jeff. We talked foot injuries suck, they really do. Bengals brass fucking sucks. AJ Green last year was day-to-day for half the season, and they could have put this guy on IR. They could have put him on IR × 2 if he was to miss next week, which he will. So what's going on with Joe Mixon, and do you think we'll even see him the rest of the way?
I don't think, even if they put him on IR, I don't think it would have changed. I can't, I'm not in the building, so I can't speculate on exactly what happened.
Is anybody?
Who knows?
That's the question.
Not come draft day.
It's just a weird situation. One of those that makes me think, okay, was something missed on the initial imaging? And I'm super curious if we find out.
You tweeted about that, Jeff. You actually tweeted about that throughout this process too. I noticed. Just wanted to throw that out there because you are a really good follow for that kind of stuff.
Oh, appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those weird things. I'm really curious if we find out over the next couple of days if maybe there's a fracture. Again, not confirmed, but just something is off about this, So honestly, I can't even say, I think we'll see him at the end of the season. I have no idea. This is a weird situation.
And they probably don't know.
Yeah. I hope they're getting re-imaging, but weird.
Well, he got put on the IR today, didn't he?
Today?
I thought I saw that, yeah. So, I mean, that's at least 3 weeks from now, and then he's already – this is upcoming going to be week 4, I believe, right? So, yeah.
Well, week 5, technically, if you include the bye week, right?
Yeah, so true.
It's crazy. So where does that, I'm going to skip past Joe Burrow here, the other Joe, because starting him in a tough matchup at Pitt, it's tough. He just had a 12.5-point outing at Pittsburgh. So are you really going to roll him out against a defense that's equally, if not more difficult against the pass, against quarterbacks in fantasy football? I don't know. But if you have to, I understand it because of the difficult matchups across the slate for quarterbacks. But what do we think about Gio Bernard? He's the birthday boy, guys, tomorrow. So it was always going to be a Gio game.
I've tweeted about this. You always start guys when they play on their birthday.
It's an exact time.
What if their birthday falls on a Wednesday?
It's tricky. It's every stat, Julian. You take those if it supports your argument.
Week.
You throw them
There
away.
you go. Yeah, it's their birthday week. There you go.
It's a pretty tough matchup though. Washington allows under 25 receiving yards to running backs per game. That was one that I kind of picked out of there because Gio. Someone asked me about Salvin Ahmed versus Gio Bernard. I answered Gio Bernard because of the pass catching floor was the answer I kind of came down to after sifting through some stuff. But I don't know. It's kind of tough because of how difficult the matchup is. So what do you guys think? Do you want Gio Bernard or either of those Colts running backs that we talked about against Green Bay? A spectacular matchup.
I'd go Gio just for the floor that he's going to bring you. The volume he's going to have, and you don't really know who's going to be getting the carries in Indy. I think the majority of the production is going to come from Hines, but what if JT starts to put something together and maybe the coaching staff says, oh, okay, you know what, we're going to give some more to our new rookie running back, or maybe Wilkins doesn't fumble 2 times inside the 5 and gets a couple more touches, I don't know. But I know Gio's going to get the rock. Otherwise, who else are they going to give it to? P. Ryan? No.
They have been involving P. Ryan. Even Travion Williams, we saw solar eclipse.
But who's
Travion
starting
Williams.
P. Ryan? No one.
Not me.
I had that discussion with someone today of it's one of those situations where some people like to get too tricky, where it's like, don't pick up Amaje P. Ryan.
No. Yeah, absolutely not. Don't pick up LaMichael P. Ryan. Gio or J.D. McKissick in this same game?
McKissick.
Yeah, that's almost an easy one, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy, but that's why I kind of think That's
Sorry,
why I
go on.
kind of think I just kind of think Nyheim Hines might be the play over Gio Bernard too. If we all are in agreement that it is Nyheim Hines over Jonathan Taylor, I think it might be a floor versus ceiling, like Brian said though. Like if you're down early after that Thursday night football matchup, maybe you do go with the Colts running back for that ceiling against Green Bay, which is a cake matchup. If not, you're probably going to just make the sharper play there for sure. So this wide receiver room, guys, Washington allows the fewest passing yards in the NFL. They allow the fourth fewest air yards. They give up the third fewest yards after the catch. Wide receivers have just 5 touchdowns against Washington this year. Like, this is a really tough matchup. Are you trying to, because we're probably starting Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, as we kind of alluded to, but Tyler Boyd gets Jimmy Moreland, who hasn't allowed a touchdown in slot coverage all year. Like, are you trying to build in some upside around your lineup if you have Tyler Boyd, if you have T. Higgins in your lineups? And is there a possibility we could get a 0 from T. Higgins, who probably has Kendall Fuller all over him?
I'm rolling both of these guys out in this game. I think there's going to be enough volume, enough pass attempts to make one of them fantasy relevant. And I think Boyd is a fine play. I'm not scared of Moreland in this matchup. I know he hasn't given up the touchdowns, but I think Boyd will do enough to make him fantasy relevant in this matchup.
Yeah, and I think too, Ty, like with what you were saying earlier, if you got Tyler Boyd or T. Higgins in this lineup, this is a position where I'd rather play Nyheim Hines over. Sorry, I'm blanking. Who are we comparing there? Nyheim Hines and
J.D. McKissick, or
yeah,
are we talking?
Yeah,
or
well,
are we talking Gio Bernard?
Gio.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at Gio and Hines, and I've got Higgins or Boyd in my bench, I'm probably playing Hines because I want that ceiling. Whereas, I think I don't see a world where Gio's able to go out and get a 30-point game in this one, but I do think that's possible for Nyheim Hines against the Packers D.
Yeah, and I think Brian mentioned it. Like, it's probably not possible for Tyler Boyd in this matchup, but he probably is locked into 10 PPR points or whatever. T. Higgins always has that possibility to break a long one, to score a touchdown in the red zone. Like, he's serving several niches in this offense. And the guy has the 6th most receiving yards per game by a rookie wide receiver all time right now. Speaking of all-time players, wide receivers, AJ Green returned to practice. Can't believe you didn't mention it, Jeff. He has 68 targets this year, 0 touchdowns for AJ Green, the most targeted player of, he has 11 more targets than anybody else without a touchdown. So we've dropped AJ Green, but are we worried that maybe he could come back on at any point? Or do we think the offense will even trend more away from him?
I think he's done, man. You talk about this every week, Ty. We talk about how
I just won't quit it.
Yeah, I know, I get it, and from his history as an NFL player, he's an elite talent. But you gotta hang up the cleats sometimes, man.
Duly noted.
I would say
so. Speaking of which,
I would say it falls right there with the T.Y. Hilton discussion.
Yeah,
like 100%, right?
Yeah.
And even the Jarvis, like we could throw Jarvis Landry in there because of situation and like little things like that. You know what I mean? I think those guys just fall in a bucket where they're not scoring for a reason. Yeah. Speaking of which, Alex Smith, that is a guy who didn't hang him up. We thought he would have, should have, could have. He's come back, had back-to-back 300-yard games for the first time in his career, coming off a week 10 performance with the most passing yards in his career. So is there any way you're starting Alex Smith in a plus matchup this week? Check down Smitty.
Only in a super flex league.
Yeah. 2 QB leagues for sure, man. I think he's a QB too in 2 QB leagues, probably in the 20 to 24 range. But the worst part about Alex Smith is the red zone targets just they don't turn into touchdowns, but he's able to push the ball downfield. He's got weapons, and this offense has actually been rolling with him. So I'll throw him out there.
Yeah, he's certainly going to win comeback player of the year. Antonio Gibson, guys, who would have looked at the rookie running backs? James Robinson, running back 3, Antonio Gibson, running back 12, the only rookie running backs in the top 12. Then you have Swift, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, in that RB2 range. Do you think Antonio Gibson can be a week winner, Brian, or will McKissick kind of stick around here? And by stick around, I mean play more than him and see the awesome usage in the passing game in the slot and shit.
I think McKissick's going to stick around. I mean, he's seeing so many targets since Alex Smith has come in. It's hard to get away from him, especially in any sort of PPR format. But, well, I was never a big Gibson person, like, coming in. I made that very clear in some of our chats, but he's looked good, you know, when he's got the ball. And I'd be surprised if Washington didn't give him the ball a little bit more. But I still think it's going to be a shared backfield here, and with McKissick probably getting the majority of the passing work.
Yeah, and I asked because, like, Cincinnati is a mediocre matchup this week. They get Dallas next week. Pittsburgh and San Francisco, very tough matchups after that. But Seattle in week 15, Antonio Gibson gets the Panthers in week 16. Ron Rivera revenge game. But more importantly, Carolina allows the fourth most fantasy points to running backs. But you're right, Brian. Like, he's ceding the majority of receiving work, no doubt, to JDM. AG has under 15 receiving yards in 3 straight games. Luckily, he scored 4 rushing touchdowns in those 3 games. So, like, do we think J.D. McKissick, he's the running back 30 already in PPR. Is he a top 24 running back going forward, Jules?
In PPR, I think he is, man. I mean, I was just kind of looking at this, and I think it's crazy that, you know, it's going into week 11 in the NFL season, and we're looking at this Washington offense with 4 viable fantasy options. You know, it's like, that blows my mind. We got Antonio Gibson, JD McKissick, Terry McLaurin, and then, you know, Logan Thomas, if you want to dig a little deeper, and like
Cam Sims.
Yeah, you know, Cam Sims, and like there is options in this offense. And yeah, man, I'll roll JD McKissick out there as an RB2, no questions.
Yeah, and I'll figure out which Sims is which eventually in Washington. And
why do teams do that, eh? Why do they draft 2 players with the same last name that play the same position?
I know, yeah. Like, you're gonna go trade for Duke Johnson, really? Or David Johnson, really?
Right. That is a Bill move.
Yeah, totally. I think we're kind of on the same page. Like, essentially, these guys are number 2 and 3 options in the passing game, you know, so far. But like, what do you think, Jeff? Do you think this offense can support multiple top 24 running backs? Both were top 12 running backs this past week. Yeah.
Yeah. As long as McKissick gets the volume, which I think he will. I did a breakdown 2 or 3 weeks ago, and man, Antonio Gibson, his pass pro is just atrocious. And there were, in Alex Smith's first start back, actually when he took over for Kyle Allen that game.
Well, why is Alex Smith in there? Because
Antonio Gibson,
he
exactly.
just blew that block. Yeah, like, that's why we have
And it was a couple plays later. Yeah, but he just throws his shoulder into it, you know. And it was a couple plays later where he whiffed and Alex Smith took a hard hit. So it's like, then you see J.D. McKissick on the field more. So yeah, I think I view Gibson as that running back 2 with upside if he scores, and then J.D. McKissick easily a flex play for me with running back 2 upside if he gets more targets.
Yeah, and it sucks. Like, one thing I would look at is, like, you look at how many times these guys are lining up in the slot. J.D. McKissick is annihilating the running back position when it comes to targets, anything out of the slot. And that's only because, like, Antonio Gibson is way, way, way down there. And it really is just because he's out there. So he's going to be the one who kicks out to the slot when that guy goes in motion. It sucks. And, you know, I think if it goes away, Antonio Gibson could give this team a huge boon in the receiving game, especially. Like, 32% of Alex Smith's passes have gone to J.D. McKissick so far for under 4 yards per attempt, 9 yards per attempt to anybody not named J.D. McKissick. So the efficiency is lacking, but the volume will be there because he checks down at the highest rate in football. So Terry McLaurin, elite wide receiver. Everyone likes that. Good matchup. 7 most points allowed to wide receivers. I think only the Cowboys and Vikings have allowed more touchdowns to wide receivers too. So I really like Terry McLaurin in a blow-up spot. Jules, Logan Thomas, what do you think? Like, do you think he's a top 12 tight end in this matchup? Cincinnati,
Yeah, man.
dream matchup.
I really do. I think he can roll him out there. This is a game to me that, you talked about the low over under earlier, but like I said, I actually think that this game, it actually gets up there a little bit. And I think that Logan Thomas is proven to be a viable part of this offense, right? Alex Smith doesn't like to push the ball deep downfield, and Logan Thomas is there for those deep digs and the routes in the middle of the field. So especially in any kind of tight end premium league, I'll throw him out there, as a flex play, even because I think he's probably safe for 10 points.
What do you think, Jeff, as a Debbie guy?
Yeah, for Logan Thomas.
Yeah, just talent wise, did you ever like Logan Thomas? Like, he's kind of a guy that
man,
I've always had my eye on.
Yeah, his athletic profile is pretty nuts. He was there was a group of people, I was included in there, who was touting Logan Thomas around July, August. He just hasn't been super consistent, but the quarterback play hasn't either. So, but again, what we've said about tight ends, because it's been so thin, I like him as that kind of that lower end tight end one with upside if he gets the targets. So
for sure.
And he might be a guy who eats if J.D. McKissick goes away even a little bit. Like those low average depth of targets, the poor offensive line, that's all very conducive to tight end targets. Speaking of which, let's go to two teams who love to target their tight ends, the Tennessee Titans at the Baltimore Ravens. This is a battle of 6-3 teams who suck against the spread. Rematch of last year's divisional round playoff game, famously or infamously won by Tennessee, depending on if you're a Steelers fan like me and Bry. Derrick Henry ran the ball 30 times in that game. Tannehill completed 7 passes for 88 yards en route to a 28-12 victory over the then franchise record 14-2 Ravens. And it's cute when people talk about how they got down quick and all that. Really, it was just turnovers and not finishing drives, including failed 4th down attempts for the Ravens. But my point is, Lamar had over 500 total yards on offense by himself in that game, over 360 passing, over 150 rushing. So do you guys think that Lamar is going to come in and have the same success against this Titans defense that's been really bad this year?
Hey, real quick, Ty, sorry. I got to get going.
Sorry
to interrupt that. Yeah.
No worries. Tell
Thanks,
everyone
guys.
before you head out, just tell everyone where you can find where they can find you on Twitter.
Yeah, you can find me at JM Thrive PT, and then I write content with Dynasty Vipers, and then I'm doing injury analyst work over at Destination Devi.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. We definitely have to get together in the off season and talk for a lot longer.
Yeah, we'll do. Thanks, guys.
Thanks Jeff, man.
See you later. And then there were 3 guys.
So just the True North crew, the OGs. So let's we can fly through these a little bit quicker then for sure. So what do you think about Lamar coming in and kind of revitalizing his season this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to bench Lamar, man. I think in a lot of situations it's difficult to look at a matchup like this where we've seen him go for 500 yards offensively and in the past and put him on the bench. And I think this could be a get right game for him. This offense hasn't been able to click, and Harbaugh's he's got to do something. He's got to do something. This team is winning games, but it's just hasn't been the same way that they were able to do it last year, where they were just so electric. And I'm not sure if it's Lamar using his legs or if it's through the passing game. But I think you could throw him out there, and you're safe for a back end QB1 performance.
Brian, do you think Baltimore passes in this game, or do you think it's going to be like a ton of rushing against Tennessee?
I don't know, man. Like, if you're going up against Tennessee, they're easier to get over on by throwing on them. But Baltimore, their offense sort of runs through that running game, and whether the running game is the actual running backs or Lamar Jackson, they like to run that ball on the ground. But who knows? Baltimore, they eventually have to try something different. They just can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. And you hear Lamar saying, like, defenses are calling out their plays. Like, they know what they're doing.
Mhm.
People have figured them out. They're going to have to eventually figure out something. Maybe they actually start passing the ball if Lamar can, in this matchup.
And that's why I was at. That's kind of what I was alluding to, right? Like, it's perfect because this is the game they could get their passing game going. It's frustrating though because they probably do just run the ball. Like, I just can't. I don't know. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
Like, you look at, and I think for
With
Tennessee,
Gus Edwards too.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah. And I think Tennessee won't be able to throw anyways. And the Ravens are the number one scoring defense in all of football. But they've been extremely potent against the run as well. But we saw Derrick Henry like single-handedly beat the Ravens in January of this year. Also, I wanted to mention Brendan Williams is questionable. The Ravens nose tackle, Calais Campbell, is out. That puts all the pressure on the linebackers. And Patrick Queen has been outstanding in year one, but last week he looked like a rookie. We also have injuries to monitor in Tennessee, like the offensive line. Adam Humphries, I think he's been ruled out at this point.
Yeah.
And Adoree Jackson as well, the cornerback. We're monitoring him as well. Is anybody starting Ryan Tannehill in a really, really tough matchup here? Like, are you going to rank him as a top 12 quarterback this week?
No, not 12.
Not at all.
No.
What do you guys think of Donta Foreman? Like Derrick Henry, blah blah blah. Jeremy McNichols, I liked as a handcuff with Darrington Evans and Sonoris Perry out. But do you guys think Donta Foreman is somebody that we should be picking up as like a high end handcuff?
Is he the handcuff though? Like, he had that one pass play that he ended up catching and taking in for a touchdown, but I actually honestly didn't see the snap percentage. Was he the second highest snaps for the running backs?
I didn't look either.
Is it McNichols?
I think he was. No, I mean Foreman was getting involved last week.
Yeah, like anecdotally, he was out there way more.
Which honestly shocked me. Like, I think he was only signed like 2 weeks ago, and like if I'm Mike Vrabel, I'm just giving the ball to Derrick Henry. I'm not fooling around by bringing Donta Foreman in. I don't think he's a guy that, like, he's not a guy I want to play at all in fantasy. Like, that touchdown's a fluke, I think, but he is getting like a little more involved in terms of like real NFL football and like actually being a player. Like, he is getting involved in the game plan. It's just not going to translate to viable fantasy points. You're going to get 30 yards on 7 touches, something like that, right?
Yeah, this backfield will go down as I'll just have a guy from this backfield as a roster clog on lots of teams this year that will not pan out. It's really funny. But I think these are the kind of offenses that I chase the handcuff from, the few that I chase a handcuff from. What about AJ Brown, guys? He had his first dud in forever last week, probably since that playoff game where AJ Brown had just 1 catch for 9 yards on 3 targets, that playoff game against Baltimore last year or this year. So is there any way that AJ Brown is somebody that you would leave on your bench this week?
Oof.
No.
Yeah, you have
I'm throwing him out there.
There's no way I'm benching AJ Brown.
Yeah. So hopefully the team
you have to have a
stout
lineup to put him on your bench.
And hopefully the team's able to like get him some looks that he can, accentuate his yards after the catch ability, because we haven't seen that as much this year. And it was something we worried about because he is an outside wide receiver, of course. So Adam Humphries is out this game. We're probably going to see Corey Davis in the slot a good 30% of the time. Do you guys have any interest in Corey Davis this week? He probably gets Marcus Peters the other 70% of the time. So it's not a great
yeah. It's not great, but I mean, I will say without Adam Humphries, this team thrives on play action and those crosser routes. And Corey Davis has been able to be successful in that role. So, like if you're desperate 3 wide receiver leagues or, multiple flex leagues, I think you can throw Corey Davis out there.
And I think with him going in the slot more, we could even see one of those deep touchdowns off play action when Tennessee is down in this game. But I worry it might go to Khalif Raymond is the only thing I worry about there. Speaking about work going to guys that you don't expect or you don't think of, but Anthony Ferkser has just really been involved, especially on third downs and stuff. So are we a little bit down on Jonnu Smith right now, or where do we stand with him?
He's still a red zone monster, man. This is a big athletic guy. Tannehill trusts him in the red zone. I am a little down on him. And this the schedule's tough moving forward and for the rest of the year. But I'm not playing Ferguson.
I know. But Jules, I'm starting
Yeah.
Logan Thomas over Jonnu in a league. And I love Jonnu. He's a yak machine. He's developed this red zone role this season. So I really do like Jonnu. I just feel like he's trending in the wrong direction. He's playing in a really tough matchup. Like guys
100%.
who are cold in a tough matchup, I always worry about for some reason.
He hasn't had more than 2 receptions since week 5 in a game.
Wow. And how many touchdowns? Do you have his game log up there, Bri? How many touchdowns did he have from weeks 1 to 5?
1 to 5, he had 5.
But he had,
in
he had
4
one
games.
3 touchdown game, right? Or 2 touchdown game?
No, he had 1 touchdown week 1, 2 in week 2, and then 2 in week 5. He had that bye week in week 4, him and the Pittsburgh fiasco, COVID stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So Jonnu's a tough one. He's going to end up like right in that, like in weekly rankings in a tougher matchup. He's going to end up all the way back to that, top 12 range, like 8 to 12 tight end. And I'm just looking in ECR right now. He's actually the tight end 12 on the money. So even lower than I kind of thought he would be this week. And Logan Thomas is ranked right below him. So expert consensus ranking says I'm making a big mistake.
For what it's worth,
I don't know if you are though, man.
Yeah,
I'd play Logan Thomas just because I'd rather have the more consistent targets and the more volume than be depending on the touchdown. Because if you don't get a touchdown with Jonnu lately, you're hooped.
100%.
You know who that's even more true for is Lamar Jackson, the quarterback that we kind of talked about off the top. I just wanted to mention that what we've seen this year is that touchdown rate that we talked extensively about. We talked a lot about a lot of stuff, the slot production. It's all gone down. It's all come back to earth. It's still not bad, but I just want to point out that Lamar Jackson is only averaging about 10 yards passing less per game this year compared to last year. His touchdown rate's almost been cut in half. So Lamar Jackson, I bring him up again just to mention that he's the guy who's seeing a lot of these running back carries that we're splitting between 3 guys right now. So Mark Ingram's back for this game. Who are you starting if you have to start one of these running backs? Because J.K. Dobbins actually led them in snaps last week with Mark Ingram coming back. And then Brian mentioned, Gus the Bus.
Oh God. This is so
Justice
tough.
Hill played 4 snaps.
That's ugly, man. That's so ugly. I think if I had to pick one, I think I'm rolling out probably J.K. Dobbins. But I don't feel real confident about any of them. I don't think I want to play Mark Ingram in any formats this week. And Gus Edwards, I mean, I'll take a shot on Gus in DFS, but in my fantasy lineup, I just think like it's low volume with minimal upside. It's just not great for fantasy.
Not great, Bob. And I think it's interesting. Like I think we would all take, like, Bri, you take JK too.
Yeah, I want the most elusive runner there. If you're going on less volume, the chance of breaking off a big play, it goes to JK.
Yeah. And I think it sucks. Like, if this was just 2 running backs, I'd have some conviction that even maybe Dobbins and Edwards could produce in the same week, even absent pass catching work, because that's the big issue in this offense is that you have Lamar Jackson vulturing, you have no pass catching work. So you really have no high leverage work whatsoever. And you're banking on big plays at that point. And J.K. Dobbins is literally the only guy in this offense that can break off those big plays at a consistent rate. Gus Edwards is very inconsistent in that fashion, in my opinion. Like he has a lot of like 5-yard runs. Like he's very good at maintaining a higher efficiency. Is that the Jackson 5, like the 5 yards per carry any running back will have behind Lamar Jackson? But yeah, I think if anyone's going to prevail that we're going to be starting in that very sexy strength of schedule come fantasy football playoffs for Baltimore, it will be J.K. Dobbins. Do you guys think Hollywood Brown is a guy that will be starting going down the stretch? Like, is this a blow up spot against the Titans this week?
I mean, if we think that Lamar corrects it this week, we pretty much have to think that Hollywood gets on track too. But I am still skeptical about Hollywood, right? Like I was super pumped on him coming into the year. A lot of air yards, a lot of targets downfield. Was able to kind of be the juice that was able to make this offense go outside of Lamar. And this year, it has not looked good, right? He's hardly getting involved. I mean, a couple weeks ago, he had a 1 reception game. It was a 6-yard touchdown. If he didn't score that touchdown, you get a dud out of Hollywood, right? Like, it's a wide receiver 3 for me.
Yeah, he's a wide receiver 3 for me, but he's not getting involved on his account.
Mm-hmm.
He's just not getting catchable targets. If you look over the last 3 games, Marquise Brown has 14 targets and Willie Snead has 18, except Marquise Brown is catching 42% of them because Lamar is just not hitting him. If you look
super
at him,
frustrating.
it's way over his head.
Yeah, and he's left.
He's on the sideline. He's getting frustrated as he goes over there, and they're just like looking at each other and then walking away from each other. There's something going on there. They're not clicking. The tension's there, and hopefully it rights itself, but it's not right now.
Yeah, that there's been so many like deep touchdowns left on the field this year for those two. I will say that if Lamar can, make it happen, because I totally agree with you, Brian, that the ball is in Lamar's cart, but the ball, like Malcolm Butler is the guy. He gets a lot of credit for his Super Bowl, obviously. He gets a lot of credit for his success against physical wide receivers, thinking of Allen Robinson recently in that Bears game. But Malcolm Butler cannot hang with speed. So I really, really, really like this matchup. I don't even know if they're going to let Malcolm Butler cover Hollywood because
I don't think so, yeah.
No, it's just so obvious that he can't hang with speed. So, it might be that guy whose name I can't even pronounce. Their second cornerback there. But Hollywood Brown is a phenomenal matchup this week. What do you guys think about Mark Andrews, who has Kenny Vaccaro on him?
The volume just hasn't been there with Mark Andrews to make me feel really confident in playing him. I mean, in the places that I do have him, I'm rolling him out because generally you don't have a better option. And there's always touchdown upside with Mark Andrews when Baltimore gets into the red zone. And with going up against Kenny Vaccaro, it's a plus matchup. So it's kind of hard not to roll with them.
Yeah, I agree, Brian. And if I got Mark Andrews, I'm freaking throwing him out there. I'd have to have a clearly better option in front of him to say I'm benching him. So I do think it is a plus matchup, and I think the 2 best weapons that these guys have in the passing game are Mark Andrews and Hollywood. So if you want to put up points in this game, you're going to use your playmakers. At least I hope. It's fantasy football. What do we know?
What I know is that targeting Mark Andrews, Hollywood Brown, and Lamar Jackson last offseason was a way to monopolize that entire passing game. And that's what you should do in best ball this offseason, no matter which team it is. Because obviously you couldn't do that this year with them because you had to spend crazy high picks to do so. But we could do that with all 3 of those guys in the teens of fantasy drafts in the offseason last year. What game do we have next here? So I am looking at the Jets and the Chargers. So
Jets and Chargers.
Woo! So the New York Jets.
New haircut time.
Never. You're not cutting that hair ever. We want a mullet forever, Brian. I want a mullet.
No, man, it's got to go eventually.
What's the wife think of that?
It goes with my Firebird.
Love it.
He rocks his I rock. Yeah. He rocks it well. So Joe Flacco, Flacco, guys. He is an I rock Zed in a Camaro world here. What do we think is going to happen with these weapons? Like, are you starting a Jamison Crowder? Are you still interested in a Denzel Mims or Brashad Perryman? What does Joe Flacco starting for this offense do for your guys' expectations?
I'm not excited about any of these any of these weapons. If I had to pick one, it'd be Crowder. I think he's a pretty consistent option in terms of what he can offer you. But I want to believe that Mims is going to be the guy, but it's really tough for me to say that there's going to be two viable fantasy receivers in a Joe Flacco offense. I'm just out on it. I'd rather be wrong about these guys than take my shot and get
Totally. You're always,
you know.
yeah, you're never breaking ties for an Adam Gase player, even in a good matchup against the Chargers. But do you think there'll be even one fantasy relevant running back in this game? Like, is Michael P. Ryan on your guys' radar as a top 24, top 36 guy? Where does he fall for you guys?
Again, ugly. It just feels ugly, right? Frank Gore gets a lot of the unvaluable fantasy work, but it's valuable for their team, right? It's between the 20s. He's a grinder. He'll see 15 touches and, probably get 40 yards on it. But, he helps their offense. And then, if P. Ryan doesn't score, I don't think there's a whole lot of upside.
Agreed. Agreed.
He's a flex play at best and not with much of a high upside for P. Ryan. I'm not rolling him out there unless I absolutely have to.
Yeah, I've never seen a guy who's in a situation I hate more, whose talent I also hated more coming into the process. And I don't know if I've ever seen a team reach on a running back like that. Like, I don't think P. Ryan was getting drafted, just for his athletic profile. Like, he came in and tested worse than cousin Samaje P. Ryan, and he weighs like 40 pounds less than Samaje P. Ryan. It's just hilarious how uninterested I was in the Michael P. Ryan, who just doesn't break tackles, doesn't have production, doesn't have anything on his resume that other than like he's a safe guy, like a steady guy. Speaking of the complete opposite of that, let's go to the other side, the 9.5-point favorite Los Angeles Chargers. And the reason it was so luxurious that we could just breeze through the Jets is why we have such a low point total in this game. I think it's 46.5 last time I checked. So Justin Herbert, only Cam Newton's had more fantasy points through the first 8 starts of their career all time. Only Kyler Murray and Aaron Rodgers have more top 12 performances this week. So do you guys think we're looking at a possible first quarterback 1 overall performance from Justin Herbert this week against the Jets? Or do you think they're such heavy favorites that we're going to get 4 running backs in this game?
It's definitely a possibility, but it's a low probability, I think, on this one. I think they do enough to keep them in the game, run the ball. Their defense can probably score as well. And I just don't think the Jets are going to make them have to throw and for Herbert to throw too many touchdowns to give him the 1 overall upside.
Yeah, I kind of agree. And that's why I kind of wanted to ask, because a lot of people are saying that he's going to have this super explosion. He might have 30 points, whatever, might have 25 like he does every freaking week. But I do think that we need to temper expectations a little bit, just because you do have Kalen Ballage, you do have Tremaine Poe, you do have Joshua Kelly in this backfield still, and they do want to use these guys. So Kalen Ballage, what do you guys think? Like, are we starting Kalen Ballage over either running back in Denver, for instance? Like, we compared the other guys there, but are we starting him over both those guys?
That's close. I think I would. Yeah, I do lean that way. He's proven the past 2 weeks, he's been a viable RB2, right? He's coming. He's actually been an RB1 one of those weeks as well. So I know I've always kind of hated on Kalen Ballage since I saw him go 10 for 1 yard and 1 touchdown. Mm-hmm. But but he's coming up and he's producing fantasy points, and we got to look at what's actually happening now, and he's being utilized and they like him, and yeah, he's been able to produce. So I think I'm throwing him out there over either of Phillip Lindsay or Melvin Gordon, because I don't know what to expect with either of those guys.
And over LaMichael P. Ryan as well, right?
Oh yeah.
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 So what about, like, we're also starting Keenan Allen. He's in a smash spot as well. What about Mike Williams? Is he a top 36 guy for you this week?
Yeah, I think I'm throwing him out there as well. But I loved what you guys said about this looks like a really plus matchup, but I think there's a world where they can get up and it could be 21-7 and they need to run the ball. They don't need Justin Herbert to come back and try and win them games, which is what they've had to do pretty much since he started, which is a huge part of his fantasy success, is that he's been forced to go out and, throw 4 touchdowns because they have to come back. And I think that this is a game where, they don't get behind against the Jets, and, they actually get to dictate the pace and are able to go out and, actually run the offensive scheme that they want, rather than just airing the ball out and give the ball to Keenan Allen, and go from there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the game plan with Justin Herbert, because it might be something to remember for next year, for 2022. Who knows? It's definitely something we want to monitor. We don't know how long Anthony Lynn's going to be there, but we definitely want to watch that one. Bri, do you think Hunter Henry is Bri back? Yep. You want Hunter Henry as a top 5 tight end this week? What do you think?
Top 5 tight end.
I know, it's really tough.
You know what?
You can push if you want.
5.2. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I think I'm gonna play him. If they're gonna move the ball, they're gonna get down into the red zone, and he's been getting the looks in the red zone with Mike Williams, and there's a high chance of him getting a touchdown in this game. So anytime you get a touchdown, you have a chance to be in the upper part of the tight end 1 conversation. So I'll play him as a tight end 1.
Are you guys playing Hunter Henry this week, or Dallas Goedert at Cleveland?
Oof.
That's one that a lot of DFS people are going to be choosing between, I think.
Man, I think I lean Goddard there, just by a bit. There's not a whole lot of pass catchers in Philly, and I think they're gonna have to look to somebody, right? I think it's Fulgham and Goddard, and at least I hope so. I just love his athletic profile, and we know Carson Wentz loves him. And like we were just saying, Brian, I think there is a chance that this game ends up being 21-7, where the Chargers get up early and are able to just kind of coast and run the ball out. And I'm starting Hunter Henry if I got him, because they likely don't have other options. But I'm not sure he's a lock for top 5.
So we have 2 more games here, guys. We're already over 3 hours. What do you guys think? Do you want to run down the Patriots-Texans game, or do you guys want to get out of here?
Well, let's just hit it quick, because what's there to really talk about on the Patriots side of the ball?
Yeah, Cam Newton, lots of quarterback 1 performances this year. He has 6 of them. So I think Cam Newton is a start against the Texans. I think Damian Harris is in a smash spot. 75% of the touches this year have come on first down, the highest rate in the league among all running backs. Houston allows a league high 5.7 yards per carry on first down rush attempts. So I think Damian Harris is in a smash spot. What do you guys think about Rex Burkhead in a flex spot?
I was just going to say, I actually like Rex Burkhead here. The Houston defense has been surrendering I think they're the worst against running backs, and Sexy Rex, he's getting all that volume in the red zone, man. It's kind of been fun to watch. This is a guy that you've seen show flashes throughout this Patriot system for years, and it's just always kind of been that middling player. And so I think you can throw him into a flex spot and actually feel pretty comfortable, because I think he scores this week.
Totally. And, I think it's interesting because they are favored, even though they're on the road against the Texans. But, and if by fun watching him out there, you mean gut-wrenching because you dropped him on multiple dynasty rosters earlier in the season, then, yeah, I totally agree. Speaking of which, I bet a lot of people did that with Jacoby Myers. The Patriots wide receiver has seen a ridiculous target share this season. He has over 40% of these teams' targets in the last 3 games straight. 43%, 43%, 41%. But we're alluding to these multiple running backs in play. Those percentiles aren't worth as much in this New England Patriots offense as every other offense in football. So how high can we rank Jacoby Myers?
Here, you take this one, Brian.
He's definitely a wide receiver 3. I think he's been getting a lot of the volume, or percentage volume. There's not as much passing volume going on in New England, Like
It's a
Cam,
monopoly, though.
He has,
Yeah.
yeah, he's getting the majority of it, and Cam actually hasn't. I was really surprised. I sent out a tweet earlier on this week. I was really surprised when I started digging into some stuff, and Cam's actually the fourth most accurate quarterback this year. You know, adjusted for drops and everything, which I was really surprised about. And I think he can roll Jacoby out here in this matchup and feel confident as a wide receiver 3.
And maybe he'll throw a touchdown.
Yeah, maybe again. You never know, right?
All right, so let's talk about Ryan Izzo, Dalton Keene, and Devin Asiasi. Just kidding. Let's go to the other side of the ball here. Let's go to the Houston Texans. Deshaun Watson, we mentioned it's a tough matchup, but he's probably still a top 10 running back. What are we doing with yeah, thank you. What are we doing with Duke Johnson? Duke Johnson, he didn't practice a couple times this week. Are we rolling him out, though, this week?
I think as a flex, man, you know, we got our expectations up there for those RB2 numbers. And I think you just got to kind of temper it. I really do.
Think, Brad?
Yeah, I think he's sort of right. He's more of a RB2 for me.
Me too. Like, I'm pretty high on. I feel like I'm a lot higher than people on YouTube.
What's going on there, Jules?
Yeah, what do we got?
I just got some dynasty updates. I'm in the middle of a mid-season draft right now, and this guy took 4 hours, man. And then he just maxed out. He got Braxton Berry.
Sound off.
Can you guys hear that?
Yeah, we could hear whatever was going on there. Yeah.
Oh, all right. There we go. We're good. I got headphones on. I can't hear anything outside here. Brian keeps telling me my keys are making too much sound, so I keep muting myself. My bad, guys.
Duke Johnson, definitely an RB2. Obviously, we have to worry about CJ Goatsize, who's kind of been involved here. Just kidding. That was just like a Donta Foreman thing. I just needed to say his name out loud. Yeah, it just feels so good.
I was like, do we though?
Yeah, totally kidding. So
is
Will
it like
Fuller,
bringing
guys,
up past girlfriends or something?
only if I'm still in love with those past girlfriends. Yes.
Oh, okay. Sweet.
So CJ
But
Pro-Size.
No hard feeling. What do you guys think of Will Fuller, though, who finally came back to earth last week? But he's probably a wide receiver 2 in himself, right?
Yeah. I mean, if I got Will Fuller, I'm throwing him out there. He just offers so much upside for your team. And, you know, I think Houston's going to have to air the ball out.
What about Brendan Cooks? Do you think he's a wide receiver 2, or is he more a wide receiver 3?
Yeah, a 3 for me. You know, I think he can be a 2, but I think I got him, you know, in the top end of the wide receiver 3, you know, wide receiver 25 to 30 kind of range, where you're not going to be upset that you played him. He'll give you a relatively safe floor, but I don't think he gets into the end zone in this one. And, you know, I got him projected for 6 receptions and 60 yards.
Yeah, and speaking of touchdowns, Will Fuller did score a touchdown, not last week, but the week before. That was his first touchdown in his career in November or December. So I just wanted to bring that up. I know, isn't that wild? Like, he has like
'cause
20
normally he's injured
in the first 2 months.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
he's never scored a touchdown past game 8 in his career still, past the 8th game of the season. Just insane. Do you guys have any worries about Randall Cobb kind of being more involved in recent weeks since that revenge game against Green Bay, against your Packers?
Yeah, he's a bit nitpicky, you know. Like he bugs me if I'm a Will Fuller owner, and even a Brandon Cooks owner especially, because, you know, he's taken those short, you know, voluminous types of routes away from Brandon Cooks. But as far as like for the Texans go, he's a great fit for their offense in that wide receiver 3 spot, and, you know, he reminds me a bit of Cole Beasley. You know, like he can blow up any game and give you 100 yards, and you would just be like, "What? Like, where'd this come from?" And I definitely think it's possible.
Totally, yeah. And you see that's just an accentuation or an exclamation point on that Buffalo offense. Just how fantasy viable Cole Beasley has been. I think he's first in the NFL in both slot targets and receptions and receiving yards out of the slot. Mm-hmm. let's go to his former team then. Let's wrap this bitch up. Dallas Cowboys at the Minnesota Vikings. Is Andy Dalton starting in this game? Does anybody know? I'm not 100% sure here on this one.
I
He's
haven't heard
supposed to
anything
be, I
yet.
think.
Yeah,
He
I thought
did
was
clear. Yeah, he did clear the concussion protocol. So,
Would you guys rather Andy Dalton start, or would you rather Garrett Gilbert start for your CeeDee Lambs, for your Amari Coopers?
Dalton, for sure.
Yeah, I don't think there's much question about that. But I will say, Gilbert had some pretty nice passes in last week's game. Not that I think that he's a player that's able to give you multiple wide receiver or even wide receiver twos, but I do think there's one pass catcher that can still be viable in that offense regardless of who's behind center.
So Ezekiel Elliott, is he a top 12 running back? I never thought we'd be having this conversation in 2020, but he is ranked as the running back 13 in expert consensus rankings. Like, if you had to make the decision, are you playing him or are you playing, let's go with, say, Duke Johnson? Like, you'd play Zeke over Duke, right?
Yeah.
What about Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Play CEH.
I think I lean that way as well.
What about James Robinson, who also has a very difficult matchup versus Pittsburgh?
No, I'm playing James Robinson.
James Robinson.
Me too.
I might Duke over Elliott too.
Me too, and I think I would too. I think Duke and Clyde Edwards-Helaire are definitely a conversation I'd want to have with Zeke, because the Minnesota Vikings aren't the toughest matchup, that's for sure. But Tony Pollard has definitely been more involved, and Tony Pollard looks better. Like, call me crazy, he just looks like the more explosive running back at this point, the more elusive running back. What do you guys think of these wide receiver rooms? Because the reason I asked about Garrett Gilbert is I feel like Amari Cooper is a big downgrade when it's Andy Dalton in the lineup.
Yeah, that's really interesting to what do we got going on here, Ty?
I think I'm gonna die in 10 minutes, maybe. We'll see.
Okay, we'll keep this quick then. Amari Cooper's a super talented player, and I often have to remind myself, I get so caught up in the matchups and who's throwing them the ball, and sometimes it's these are real football players. They go out there and they're playmakers on their team, and they want to win football games just as bad as we want to win fantasy football games. So the playmakers are still going to make plays. They're going to do whatever they can in order to get it done. In theory, right? I mean, those guys can get shut down, and we can always,
especially Amari.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he's one of the most inconsistent players that you can start at the wide receiver position, but just those weeks that he's able to give you such a boom game it's such an advantage when you're able to get 40 points out of your wide receiver too.
Yeah. So,
and the Vikings, not a great matchup either.
So do you guys think, is Amari Cooper still a wide receiver 2? Is he a wide receiver 3? And what do you think of CeeDee Lamb, in the same respects?
Rest of the season, or
even just this week. Yeah, it's kind of a week-to-week life with these weapons, I think. So in this really nice matchup, what do you think for this week?
I don't have confidence to rank any of them out higher than a wide receiver 3.
Yeah.
But, you definitely have the opportunity to get higher production, but are you going to? Who knows? I don't think it's real high chance to get it.
Yeah. And the funny thing with me is I have zero faith in Amari Cooper. The guy has just screwed me forever and always. He always will. He always has. And CeeDee Lamb plays out of the slot almost exclusively. He's just right up there with the league leaders in terms of slot production. And we saw with Andy Dalton that he kind of keyed in on him. So I actually really like CeeDee Lamb. I'm confident saying he's a wide receiver 3. Amari Cooper can't not be a wide receiver 3. You know what I mean? So it's just ironic that I'm comfortable saying CeeDee Lamb's a wide receiver 3. But Amari Cooper, I have to put him there. And I'd probably even rank him as a back end wide receiver 2. But I just have no confidence in him. Neither do I with Michael Gallup or Dalton Schultz, which is really unfortunate as well.
Yeah, neither of those guys are are starts for me. But I will still throw Amari Cooper out there, especially if he's my flex or wide receiver. Like I'll even throw him out there as a wide receiver too, and hopefully upside because I know what he offers.
Yeah. So speaking of wide receivers, speaking of matchups, let's go to the other side. The Bears defense had not allowed a wide receiver one game all season. And then both Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen had top 12 games last week. So Kirk Cousins is probably a back end, like he's a high end quarterback too in this matchup. You guys think?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think he could be a one,
Mid to
to be
high.
honest.
See, and that's what I'm hearing a lot of. But is there any concerns that Dalvin Cook could just have 200 yards? Like, is this just a Dalvin Cook game through and through, right?
Could be, yeah. That's the kind of variance. I think that's why you'll see him ranked a little bit farther back in expert consensus ranking. You know, could he be a wide receiver or a quarterback one in an easy matchup against a Dallas defense that's giving a ton of points to the quarterback position? Yeah, but you have that option where it could just be a Dalvin Cook game, and you see him run for 200 yards and score 2 touchdowns, and Cousins just doesn't produce the numbers. So I think that's where you're getting the sort of balance and shifting back farther.
Yeah, and it's tough because it's such a fine line between whether you get one of those games and it's super awesome because Thielen and Jefferson are rolling, or if Dalvin Cook, it's a Dalvin Cook game. It's a very slow offense, and everybody it's stuff that really loses you weeks in fantasy football, I think. Mm-hmm. Is everyone confident calling Adam Thielen a wide receiver one, though, like going forward and this week? Like this week, nobody's not going to rank him as a top 12 guy, but do you think he is going forward?
Oof.
I think he's a back end wide receiver one, not quite the high end wide receiver one that we saw at the beginning of the year with the emergence of Justin Jefferson in the offense and the game going through Dalvin Cook. But I think he's definitely a back end wide receiver one.
Jules, do you think Justin Jefferson's a wide receiver too?
I do. Yeah, I think this offense can support both these guys. You know, it's interesting because we look at what Dalvin Cook's been able to do, and he's just getting so much volume and torching teams on the ground. But, you know, that's actually really opened up the passing game for this team, right? Week to week basis. It's, you know, defenses are selling out to stop Dalvin Cook. And it's, you know, when you got a playmaker like Justin Jefferson downfield and then a possession guy who just doesn't drop the ball and Adam Thielen, like, you know, that's a pretty potent offense. And, you know, I think they can produce a top 20 players at their respective positions.
No, I agree. And I think the people that it hurts is the tight ends, right? Like Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph are just taking the biggest hits. I mean, what I noticed with these two wide receivers is that they're both seeing high leverage work just in different aspects. Like Justin Jefferson's just been a yards after the catch machine. Mm-hmm. He's also only behind Devontae Adams in the entire NFL in receiving yards on third down. So Kirk Cousins is looking for Justin Jefferson when it counts. But he's looking at Adam Thielen almost fucking exclusively in the end zone. 25% of the Vikings touchdowns this season have gone to Adam Thielen, which is just insane.
That's crazy.
Dude, look at the end zone targets. Like he has a monopoly throughout the team, including like you could add up everybody on the team and they won't come close to what Thielen's seeing. It's just insane. But Justin Jefferson, like the talent and what he's done on third down and the fact that he's averaging the 4th most receiving yards by a rookie wide receiver ever, only behind OBJ, Anquan Bolden, and Randy Moss. So the talent is just off the charts. And it sucks because this really hurts Irv Smith. Like he's just the guy who everybody got wrong this year because of the way this offense is, just because of the emergence of Justin Jefferson, basically.
For sure.
Poor Jimmy.
If he were here, he could comment.
I got him on my Scott Fishbowl.
Me too.
So that's pretty much it. I mean, we have the Monday Night Football game, the Los Angeles Rams and Buccaneers. It's such a good football game, but we really don't have time to go into it. Maybe what we could do is throw a little preview out via podcast format or a quick video or something on Sunday night or Monday morning so people have this because there is lots of good info to go through. We remember those teams had a 55-40 game that the Buccaneers won in week 4 last year. It was a 95-point total. They combined for 44 points in the 4th quarter of that game alone. So love to talk that game. We just don't have the time, but Brian, thanks so much. Jules, thanks so much for staying with me
course.
this whole time. And obviously, thanks to everybody out there. What are you guys gonna do with the rest of your night here? Travel?
I'm gonna go look and fix up my lineups and go to bed and get ready for tomorrow morning.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell
Drink some
time
more
indeed.
beer. And
I might dip in myself.
it's almost midnight here, guys, so I'm getting pretty tired, but
Right on.
I had a blast. I'm glad we were able to dig into this. This was a fun time.
Right on. Well, thanks everybody, and we will certainly be back next week. Make sure you follow Brian at the FF Aviator on Twitter. Make sure you follow Jules at the Point After FF. Is that right, Jules?
That is correct.
Sometimes I put the FF in front of it for some reason.
Yeah. That's all good. As
Obviously,
long as there's an
make sure you're
FF, you're fine.
Yeah, totally. And make sure you're following TCL at TCL14. He's the guy who is the fearless leader. Of course, he's obviously the guy who is very much involved in this process and really makes everything run smoothly. So we appreciate everybody's patience while we didn't have Travis with us. And make sure you're following at True North FFB. And that's all I got, Bri. Do you know how to close it out? Because
we'll run the outro and be gone. Have a good night, everybody. Good luck this week.